Hello and welcome back everyone, we Weeb Online, and today I'm going to start a new series, What If Fem Naruto Fell in Love with Erza, Part 1. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and to watch more videos like this, subscribe to my channel and turn that bell notification on so you never miss an upload. Now wasting no more time, let's begin.
Hospital after she only administered a half-powered Rasengan to his stomach. But she was also able to free her bed friend from the mental control that Orochimaru, the gay pedophile, had over him thanks to that attack. His cursed mark was broken. But now that she was in front of the council, her face was filled with disbelief at what was being said. Rewind the time by roughly 10 minutes. The young Leaf Genin yelled, "I am what?" Her unhurt friends who also participated in the mission were standing behind her. The two who weren't there were occupied with healing from injuries that nearly killed them during the mission to get Sasuke. They all wore the same expressions of incredulity. The results of the council's recent voting, which was decided by a single vote, were due to the results of the mission, during which 3 of our most powerful genin as well as the last Uchiha were critically injured, the latter happening at your own hand by your own word. You, Uzumaki Naru, are hereby banished from Konohagakure and exiled from the land of fire. Homura, a village elder, spoke. You have until noon tomorrow to pack up your belongings and leave. Kaharu and Danzo, who had spent a lot of money on the Uchiha's training, nodded in agreement with the elders next to him. The latter wanted the weapon to appear to vanish so he could enlist her in his root Anbu, hoping to use her love for her home to keep her hidden. With tears streaming down her face, Naru rushed out of the room and building, furious and deeply saddened. She hurried past Ichiraku's without even pausing. Shikamaru muttered, Sasuke will not be happy about this, so that only one Inuzuka Sume or another genin could hear him. The latter nodded in agreement. The adults didn't know, but Sasuke had recovered long enough to apologize to everyone before returning to Konoha. All Sume could do was wonder what he meant. After Naru left the room, a civilian council member muttered, we let the demon off too easily. Since the laws pertaining to Naru by her predecessor were still in force as long as she was in Konoha, Tsunade promptly ordered his arrest. That day, it was the only thing that gave her a positive feeling. Danzo secretly ordered one of his roots to shadow the weapon as soon as the council was over, only to discover that the girl had vanished and that her apartment was devoid of everything she owned except for her forehead protector, which was hanging on the doorknob. Danzo and every shinobi and civilian saw the same thing after a thorough search of the village and the surrounding area. Naru Uzumaki was no longer there, with the exception of 4 individuals, that is. After a few days through the canopy, 3 shinobi were racing toward the only location they knew the now former member of their team could have been going. One Uchiha Sasuke was in the lead. He had woken up to the news from a jubilant civilian council member. Sasuke almost broke the man's neck with a single blow, despite what the poor man thought. He had hurried to the Hokage Tower right away, only to discover Tsunade sobbing and intoxicated while clutching a photo of Naru and herself. The morning following Naru's disappearance, flashback. He questioned, Tsunade-sama, where has she gone? She gazed at him through tears. His sensei and the rest of his team hurried through the door before she could respond. She is heading to Nami. She was already waiting for me in my office when I came here, bag packed and ready to go. Tsunade broke down. I never got to give her inheritance. Sasuke turned to chase after his teammate, but this stopped him. He informed Tsunade, I'll give it to her. Ba-chan. And substituted Tsunade with Naru's name. Tsunade handed over a large scroll, which Sasuke fastened to his back, and said, please do. Flashback was over. Sakura remarked nostalgically, it has been a while since we have come this way. And hopefully this time there won't be a rogue ninja in the way this time, Kakashi concluded. He said, I don't think now is the time for that, sensei. Sakura's mood soured. Sasuke yelled from the front, I see it. They were both unaware that a distance had grown between them and Sasuke. They were overcome with nostalgia as they emerged from the tree line and saw a huge stone bridge. Until they read the sign that is placed close to the entrance. The Great Bridge of Uzumaki. This bridge bears the name of a woman who put her life in danger to keep us all safe. I hope her legacy endures forever. Sasuke snarled, his pride having been wounded, but he decided to let it go because there would be plenty of chances later on for him to regain it. An hour later, Nami no Kuni's eastern shore Naru said goodbye to everyone in the community who was saddened by her leaving. Just Inari was threatening to pour his tears over the pier. It wasn't much better for Tazuna. She had already put one foot on the boat when she sensed her old teammates were getting closer, She chose to cast off because she wasn't sure what to do. Shadow clones had taught her how to sail in no time. Her boat was halfway to the horizon when Sakura, Sasuke, and Kakashi arrived. In an attempt to have a final conversation with her, Team 7 ran over the water after her after exchanging brief greetings with the locals. Chapter 1. New Adventure, New Land Timeskip, Magnolia, Evening, 2 weeks later. Lost in her memories, the young redhead sat by herself on the beach behind the Guildhall, gazing out over the ocean. Even after joining Fairy Tail for a month or so, she still had trouble trusting anyone, possibly with the exception of the Master. She had been approached by the majority of the guild members, but she had ignored them all. For the nth time in the past hour, she let out a sigh. She felt the first drops of rain fall on her head and decided to go back inside. 10 miles offshore in the meantime, as the storm pounded her boat from side to side, Naru was yelling like a sailor. Pirates had been pursuing her, but she had outrun them just as this storm struck. Her only chance of survival was to reach the shore she had spotted while escaping the pirates. Fighting the weather was difficult enough, but Naru had virtually no experience sailing in such conditions. She and another clone steered the ship while she handled the sails and ropes. Abruptly, a favorable wind increased, and the boat rapidly accelerated toward the shore. Perhaps I will make it, Naru thought. She had misjudged her speed and the location of the rocks. Within the guild hall there was the usual amount of merriment, chatter, and fighting that takes place within the guild hall's walls. Additionally, we discovered Erza Scarlet in a corner, enjoying a strawberry cake. This was one of the few occasions the other guild members had witnessed her having fun so far. Some of the guild members, including a boy with salmon hair, were drawn to the sudden, strong wind. He exclaimed, "What is that smell?" The guild hall became silent as a result. They were all aware of Natsu's extraordinary nose, which could rival that of a pack of sniffer dogs. He should have been on edge because he stopped fighting over a scent. The last time this occurred, a big monster attacked the guild. They could hear the hail striking the walls and roof and the thunder roaring outside. Additionally, they heard wood crunching, followed by a scream that ended precisely when something exploded through their guild hall's wooden walls, right next to Erza's strawberry cake. "Ah," was the response from all those in attendance. The last time someone had tampered with Erza's cake, she had thrown a fit and the master had to step in to keep her from destroying the entire building, so there was a lot of fear in the room. Even Laxus, the master's grandson, was afraid of her wrath. Additionally, Natsu never again came up to her while she was eating cake. Erza now watched in disbelief as she saw the spot where her strawberry cake had been just a few moments before, the big hole in the wall, and then what emerged from it. The other guild members did the same. A young girl with hair a few shades darker than Erza's was lying on the floor, moaning in agony. She had 3 whiskers on each cheek. She was wearing tattered blue and orange clothing and was wearing blue sandals. A big piece of wood protruded from her stomach. The girl looked down and groaned. She cursed, "For fuck's sake." She grabbed the piece of wood and continued, "Why does shit always happen to me?" When Master Makarov awoke from his astonishment, it was too late to prevent her from yanking the object violently from her stomach. She then quickly stopped the blood flow with her other hand. Her face twisted in agony, but she held back from screaming. Her closed eyelids began to well up with tears, but none of them fell. Laxus whispered, "Damn, that is one tough girl." Erza, meanwhile, was at a loss. The person who ruined her strawberry cake made her want to beat the living daylights out of them. After observing the situation, the other part felt compelled to go assist the girl. She picked a side, got to her feet, and went to the wounded woman. The others appeared terrified of what would happen. The girl would undoubtedly die if Erza began beating her up. Their instincts took over and moved their bodies for them as she yelled, "Get the infirmary ready." Their minds failed to register what had happened. A group of drone-like individuals hurried to the entrance and yelled, "Send for poor Lyuzuka-san. We need her here now, someone help me." The girl yelled, "Shut the fuck up, will you?" Immediately, she had managed to sit up and was attempting to stand up, and everyone froze and stared at her. To the surprise of the guild members, blood no longer appeared to be flowing from her wound. But based on her groans and moans, it was clear that her injury was still causing her pain. Makarov walked up to her and said, "Young one, you should sit down and have a doctor look at you." The girl had at last gotten to her feet and was stumbling toward the wall's opening before leaping through. Erza's eyes widened as she passed her, revealing blood in her ears. She hurried after the unidentified individual after saying, "Master, there is blood in her ears." Shortly after, the master trailed behind the girls, and then the rest of the group. When poor Lyuzica arrived 2 minutes later, the guild was deserted. Erza and the other guild members watched in disbelief as the injured girl made multiple clones of herself, all of whom joined the original in cursing the weather and profaning profanity as they proceeded to salvage what they could from a wrecked boat, neatly stacking the items under a canvas cover. A fresh voice yelled, "What the hell is going on here?" When the speaker saw the unidentified girl, he hurried over and said, "You go and call me for help, only for no one to be there when I arrive." Before she could get to the closest redhead, she heard one of them yell, "Hey boss. I thought we left Sakura back in Nami no Kuni." They could hardly hear the answer over the rain. "We did. I hope we haven't done a fucking loop and arrived where I started." Poor Lyuzica yelled, "Oi, how are you up and around with these wounds?" The girl replied, "Oh, you are not Sakura, same hair though. If you are wondering about the wound in my stomach, don't worry, it is healed." To the girl's surprise, poor Lyuzica grabbed her so tightly that she burst. She and almost everyone else in the room were shocked by what transpired next. 3 other girls who resembled the one who just popped hurried toward her with knives at her kidney, heart, and throat. Poor Lyuzica said, sensing the sharpness of the knives, "I am a healer, you shouldn't be able to move with such an injury." Another girl told her, "Then you shouldn't have grabbed one of my clones." To her left, 3 people were brandishing knives, and poor Lyuzica noticed a 4th person coming. "I am the original. Name's Naru. Uzumaki Naru. And to answer your question, I have a unique healing ability." The child surveyed her surroundings. "Now my turn, where the hell am I?" Time lapse. A week has passed since Naru broke through Fairy Tail's wall, and now everything is more peaceful. Naru approached the short master and said, "Gigi, I have been thinking." The short master laughed at the moniker. "About what?" he politely inquired. Naru was dressed differently, sporting a tight-fitting black pair of shorts, black-heeled sandals, and an orange kimono shirt. She wore a pair of armored fingerless gloves in her tool pouch, as she called it. He had never seen a katana so elaborately hung over her shoulder. Her hair reached her waist. Makarov was whistling in his mind. According to Naru, she was 12 years old, just like Erza, but she already had the body of a 14-year-old. She was going to be a real beauty in the future, he could tell. "Well, I have been thinking, and I would like to join your guild," he replied. Over the past week, she had become much more composed and rarely used profanity. Makarov said, "Well then, where would you like it?" "Huh?" Makarov clarified, "Your guild mark, where would you like it and in what color?" Naru paused to think, "Ah, that is what you mean, on my right forearm with the same color as my hair, please." A few seconds later, after leaving the office, Naru went straight to the bar and requested 2 strawberry cake slices. It would be difficult if the master announced her arrival right before she wanted to request the cake, creating a huge commotion and a big celebration. Naru felt a little uneasy about it and was shocked to see how happy everyone was to have her join. She simply wasn't accustomed to it. She navigated the crowds to the guild's sole other young redhead after receiving her order. Erza discovered 2 strawberry cake slices being placed on her plate after she had just finished her own. She was shocked to see Naru standing there when she looked up. "The others told me that I kind of destroyed your cake a week ago. Sorry about that," Naru said with a bow. She added softly, "I like your hair by the way. I think it looks pretty." Naru left Erza with a red face and made her way to the mission board. The display caused the crowd to split up in amazement. This novice was able to elicit an expression other than anger from the typically stoic Erza. After looking at the board for a while, Naru came across a mission that caught her attention. A pack of wolves had been causing problems for a nearby mountain village. She handed him the mission flyer and said, "Jojiji, I am heading out." I'd say you are a bit young to take this mission alone, Naru-chan," he said to her. Natsu yelled, "I'll go with her, right away," but Naru shot him a glare. Squeaking, he said, "Never mind." His flying blue cat said, "I." The day after arriving in Fury, Naru had met Happy, whom she believed to be a summoned animal. Gray smirked and remarked, "She obviously isn't interested in teaming up with you, Flame Brain." Naru deadpanned, "I wouldn't team up with you either, Mr. No Pants." When Gray noticed he was wearing his birthday suit once more, he yelled, "Not again." Erza glanced at the cake in front of her, then at the guild's newest member. For some reason, she thought Naru could relate to her the most out of all the guild members. Perhaps due to their similar hair colors, she also secretly enjoyed the company of the redheads. After making up her mind, she pushed the plate aside, got up, and approached Naru. She questioned, "Would I qualify?" to the complete surprise of everyone in attendance. Makarov dropped the mug from his grasp, causing the ale he had been drinking to spill out of his mouth. Erza was expecting a vocal response, so she was taken aback when Naru grabbed her by the wrist and pulled her from the building. They said, "See you later," as they went. No one moved for a while. "Irate when she is older she will be even scarier than Erza," said Laxus. He had no one who disagreed with him. Erza yelled, "What the hell are you doing?" as Naru essentially pulled her across the cobblestones. The girl was obviously experiencing a sugar rush, which had persisted for the previous 20 minutes or so, as she was walking at an incredible pace. Naru replied, "Making sure that you don't run away." In reality, she was unsure of how to approach Erza appropriately, and the remarks Kurama made to herself didn't help cover up the blush she was trying to conceal. She was beginning to feel bad about making amends with the ancient creature. In the past, on the train when Naru placed her head on Erza's lap, Erza blushed and fell asleep with an expression that made Erza want to pet her head. In the back of Naru's mind, she heard a voice. The voice came softly as an echo, "Come, I can help you make a decision." The elder redhead blushed as Naru tucked herself deeper into Erza's lap. She muttered, "Who is there?" Erza simply smiled and shook her head. The voice paused for a minute before abruptly changing to, suddenly, Naru was standing in front of a huge red gate that was inside a sewer. "Oh, for fuck's sake, just get your sorry ass in here already." Inside the mindscape of Naru. "Who are you? Where are you? And why did you make that comment about my ass? At least people acknowledge that it is worth looking at," Naru yelled. Abruptly, she heard footsteps behind the gate, and a huge creature materialized in the light, looming over Naru and apparently reaching the ceiling, which didn't exist. "I am." Naru interrupted the Kyuubi. "So cuuute," she exclaimed at that. "Can I pet you?" A huge wave was created when the Kyuubi's jaw struck the water. He was showing this girl his entire body for the first time, and she was behaving like a puppy. After reprimanding the Kyuubi, Naru said, "Hey, watch the jaw there. Now, sit." The Kyuubi did nothing at first, but when Naru said, "Sit," again, her voice tinged with anger, his masculine instinct took over and he sat down. The first male instinct is to avoid upsetting women. A lesson he gained from his former container. Naru had climbed up on top of him and was patting his head before he even realized it. Naru created a few hundred shadow clones, who then swarmed over Kyuubi and began petting and scratching wherever they could. "Now there's a good boy." The real Naru, meanwhile, sat on his muzzle and gave him a direct look. The Kyuubi rolled his eyes as Naru started, "Now here's how this will work. I ask a question, you will answer it." Naru called out, "Number 1, if you please." Kyuubi suddenly experienced excruciating pain from a sword stab wound made by one of Naru's clones at the base of one of his tails. With a visible aura of ki and the cutest pout she could manage, Naru said, "You didn't let me finish, but now you know what will happen." When Kyuubi saw that this person was prepared to carry out her threat, his masculine instincts returned, and he nodded rapidly. The second male instinct is to never mess with a woman who threatens to take away something that defines you because she will almost always carry out the threat. This is just part of being a man, so enough said. Naru said, "First question. Where am I?" Without hesitation, Kyuubi declared, "This is your mindscape." Second question. "Who are you and why are you here?" Naru responded. "There are 2 questions there," Kyuubi replied. Naru called out, "Number 2, if you please." The cries of the Kyuubi reverberated throughout the corridors. The third male instinct is to never correct a woman because, for some reason, it makes them angry. After a while, although she wouldn't acknowledge it, Naru denigrated her handiwork and may have vented her years of suffering onto the Kyuubi, whose name is Kurama. Since she was small, Kurama had forgiven her right away, but he would be damned if she didn't have her mother's violent tendencies and temper. After taking a quick glance at her physical activities, he was surprised to see that Naru was snoring on Erza's lap while Erza somehow managed to braid her hair into multiple long braids before dozing off. He later reconciled with Naru, who also extended forgiveness to him. It marked the beginning of an initially tense friendship that would eventually grow to be one characterized by trust and collateral damage. The end of the flashback as Naru's face went completely atomic, Kurama chuckled and said, "Now Naru, you do realize that you are holding her hand in a way that can make people think you are dating, right?" Erza was no longer walking beside Naru since she had finally adapted to the pace she was setting. However, she was taken aback when Naru blushed. Naru jumped as Kurama roared with laughter when Erza said, "You know that there is no need for you to hold my hands, right?" Only to have a mental clone of Naru stab a sword into the base of one of his tails once more. Naru admitted that she enjoyed the feel of Erza's hand, but she also said, sorry, it feels so different to hold the hand of a person who wouldn't beat the living daylights out of me. Erza exclaimed, you were beaten up for holding someone's hand? After blushing in shame, Naru nodded. Yeah. My other female teammate used to beat me senseless whenever I asked a friend of mine out on a date, saying that she wouldn't allow me to date anyone before she managed to get a date with the male member of my team. Her name is Sakura and she has a thing for brooding emos. Returning to Konoha during their date, two people, one with pink hair and the other with black hair, suddenly sneeze. Sakura had finally convinced Sasuke to accompany her, and Sasuke took this as an opportunity to receive free food. Returning to Naru when the two redheads came across the mission target, they were strolling through the forest. When Naru flooded the area with killing intent, a pack of wolves attacked them, but they were stopped in their tracks. She was furious because she had observed a few minor details about the wolves. They were all starving, to start. Secondly, they all appeared to have been chained up in some way. Naru informed her new teammate, Erza, these wolves aren't the real mission. Erza inquired, what do you mean? Rather than respond, Naru took action to end the wolves' suffering. Not long after, now that I had a closer look, they are rather skinny, Erza replied. The quest said that this area had been plagued by wolves for the last few weeks, with livestock disappearing almost daily. So if that is the case, why do these wolves look so malnourished? Naru responded. Erza said, I don't understand. Even though they killed wolves rather than people, she was still horrified to learn that Naru had killed without hesitation. Follow me. Naru left some clones to tidy up the mess and started following the wolves' tracks back. After some time, they reached a cave tucked away in the middle of the forest, with a number of empty cages arranged outside its entrance. Erza started, hey, Naru, you don't think, with that, Naru crept into the cave to see what was happening. One way to find out. Stay here and guard the entrance, will you? Magnolia the following day. You little brats. Makarov's irate roar broke the silence, causing many members of the public to laugh or giggle because it has always been a recurrent line. Within the guild, Erza and Naru had just returned from the mission and were standing in front of Makarov. He yelled, do you have any idea what you have done? Erza declared, cleared a forest of wolves. At the same time, Naru stated, I discovered that someone in the Magic Council was attempting to discredit Fairy Tail. Makarov yelled, you burnt down the entire forest, while palming his face. He then proceeded to complain about the attitude of young brats. After less than 24 hours, Naru was already experiencing headaches from her. So, you say that someone from the Magic Council was trying to frame us for not properly completing our missions? He ultimately asked Naru. As happy as ever, she replied, yup. He said, care to explain? Rewind. Naru entered the cave without any trouble at all. Although she doubted anyone in Fury could walk on walls like her, all of the traps she came across were located at ground level. Beyond the defenses, she discovered a cavern with more cages housing a variety of dog and cat species, most of them wolves, though there were also a lot of foxes in one corner. When Kurama and Naru saw the foxes, they both decided to give the offender a torturous death. They found the man without much searching. Ninpo. Toten no Jutsu. She whispered, making a few hand gestures. Transparent, she proceeded to execute her rather malevolent scheme. She heard him say to himself, I can't wait until this job is complete. That man appointed as a saint by that stupid Magic Council had better pay the agreed amount once I am done here. At those words, she focused entirely on him. It appears that even this location has a pointless council. I just wonder what that guy has against that Fairy Tail Guild. When the timed cage release seals she had put on the animal cages sounded sooner than she had anticipated, Naru swore in her head and fled. Erza was getting a little bored when she noticed Naru appeared out of nowhere. As she ran over, the former shinobi yelled, Erza, get ready. For what? Inquired Erza. Naru simply gestured toward the entrance, from which a swarm of ferocious creatures rushed out, some of them with blood streaming from their muzzles. Seriously? You just had to. Erza started to gripe after she noticed Naru making additional hand signals. Kaden. Enden no just you, Naru thought as he exhaled a sizable amount of flames at the creatures. While the survivors fled into the forest, spreading the flames, many people died in the fire. Shortly after, Erza squeaked as Naru hurried over to pick her up and throw her over her shoulder. Naru said, sorry. I may have gone overboard with that last attack, but her face conveyed to Erza that she wasn't truly sorry. Anyway, Let's get out of here before the fire gets us. The end of the flashback. Makarov whispered to himself, so one of the wizard saints is trying to undermine us. At the moment, he could only think of 3 wizard saints who harbored resentment toward him, and only one of them would be truly foolish enough to take any action. However, his guild is essentially the only one that the Magic Council would actually pay to disband. However, the fact that he was a wizard saint himself stopped them from taking any action against Fairy Tail. Abruptly, there was a commotion behind the girls. Glancing back, they witnessed Natsu tearing through the gathered crowd before coming to a halt beside Naru. "You and me, let's fight," exclaimed the boy enthusiastically. He responded with a strong uppercut that sent him flying back through the crowd like bowling pins. "Bring it, Pinky." Naru grinned as he ran toward the defeated Dragonslayer, who was grinning back at him until Naru started beating the living daylights out of him. Black and Blue beat Natsu in less than a minute. "Is that it?" inquired Naru. She hadn't even worked hard at it. When she saw Natsu in that state, a white-haired girl ran up to him and began to cry. She questioned Naru, "Why did you have to be mean to him?" Naru shot back, then glanced around. "Hey, he is the one who wanted to fight me. Anyone want to continue? That was only a warm-up." Curious about who was stronger, Erza went up to her. She might harbor a slight grudge against Naru because she had only beaten her record for defeating Natsu by a half-minute. She said, "Let's take this outside, shall we?" And Naru nodded with a fox-like smile that nearly made Erza lose her composure. They were about to begin when Makarov, who was occupied collecting all the bets, called for them to wait. After that was finished, the 2 girls immediately began fighting with their swords, Naru using the sword she discovered in the scroll her former teammates brought her and Erza using the European-style swords she kept in her pocket dimension. Although the 2 girls seemed like blurs to an untrained eye, the more seasoned mages could see how inexperienced they were with swordsmanship. Makarov, however, saw potential in both of them. "Master, why are you letting those 2 fools fight?" Mirajane approached him after they had taken a moment to catch their breath. The collective effort of 2 redheads punching her in the face at the same time and sending her flying was the answer, not words. "What?" Myra's eyes opened. She turned to face the 2 punchers. "You?" Seeing the "I will kill you" vibe from both the newcomer and her rival, she started to perspire. "Call." She found herself with her back to the guild building's wall as she attempted to crawl away. "US?" Above her, Erza and Naru were now both standing with their weapons out. Mira was shocked that her voice box was still working after all the tickling those 2 gave her, and she would always remember that day as the worst day of her career as a mage. Time-skipping Naru's years went by in a flash. Missions were much more enjoyable because she could relax and let the old man complete the paperwork, the pay was much better, and she got to spend more time with Erza, her new best friend and rival. After being persuaded to share her life story with Naru, Erza initially kept a certain distance from him. Naru then embraced her and told her about her own life, including Kurama and how her chakra differed from Athernano's. Erza responded by giving her a bone-crushing hug. Additionally, until 2 years ago, Mirajane was the third corner of a 3-way rivalry between Naru, Erza, and Mira. The 3 of them frequently engaged in 3-way battles, at least until Happy's adoptive mother passed away while on an S-rank mission, and Mirajane's sister, Lisanna, a sweet girl who was adored by everyone in the guild and also happened to be Natsu's girlfriend. Perhaps Naru pulled a practical joke on the 2 of them that resulted in their confessions. To Mirajane's surprise, Naru went to Lisanna's funeral and offered the Whitehead and her younger but still larger brother a shoulder to weep on. Erza and Naru had a small rivalry over who could beat him to submission the quickest, but Naru was ahead in this field at 3 seconds, while Erza was in at 5 seconds. Natsu, and sometimes Gray, also kept challenging Erza and Naru to fight. The 2 redheads usually worked together to complete missions, and because of the massive amount of collateral damage they caused, Team Red Sword, or simply Team Red as they were known, became known as the most successful and destructive team in all of Fury and its neighboring countries, so much so that they were once given their own state of emergency. Code Redheads. Before you do something that a member of Team Red doesn't like and they end up destroying the entire town or city, make sure that you are all safely confined in your homes. This came after a city was destroyed by a drunken mage who began to attack Naru and Erza. They were first attempted to be captured by bandits and thugs, who later wished they had never been born. Doctors throughout Ishgar came to refer to those times as the days of the broken crotches. In the end, a number of bandit groups concluded that going to prison was much safer than remaining hidden in the woods and running the risk of running into the 2 demons from Fairy Tail. While the men made significant investments in crotch protection, the female population naturally supported Team Redhead. The two of them were selected for the S-rank trials when Erza was 15, and Naru, who was about 6 months younger than Erza, was made the youngest S-class in Fairy Tail. The following year, Mira Jane passed away, making her the third youngest. It changed as they got older. To Makarov's chagrin, Naru's weekly spars still ruined the sparring arena, but they also tended to go on more solo missions than teaming up with Erza. The old man was relieved when Naru, much to Erza's chagrin, embarked on a solo mission that would likely last several months. X-783.5 Elemental Nations 12 humans and a dog waited for orders in front of the Hokage's desk. Everyone, I have decided to ignore the council and am lifting Uzumaki Naru's exile and banishment. Your mission is to find her and convince her to return to Konoha. Tsunade addressed the crowd of shinobi. As her friends and former sensei, you have the greatest possibility of success for this mission. Sasuke, a jonin now, said, Ba-chan, do we know where she is? He had adopted some of Tsunade's behaviors after her exile and banishment, including referring to her as Ba-chan, and playing practical jokes on people, primarily the civilian council, to give the impression that Naru was still present. When he returned, he realized how much the civilian council wanted to control him, so he overturned their plans and decided to become Hokage like Naru. He declared that he would enact a law upon his inauguration that would limit the tenure of civilian council members to no more than 4 years, which was well received by Tsunade and the Shinobi Council. Regarding his relationship with his lone surviving teammate, Sakura finally had enough of telling him that she loved him and made the decision to express her feelings a little more openly. However, people questioned whether Sasuke was related to Hinata because he blushed and fainted when Sakura kissed him that day. However, since then, the two have been dating. Like Tsunade, Sakura was an elite chunin at the time and focused on medical jutsu and hand-to-hand fighting. She even went so far as to earn the Yin seal. Kiba, who inherited his mother's hairstyle and fighting skills, became less conceited with the others and actively assisted Sasuke in pulling practical jokes on the members of the civilian council. Though he had grown accustomed to it by now, Shino was once again forgotten on the sidelines. Surprisingly, out of the Konoha 11, Hinata is the only Anbu. She eventually made the decision to become strong enough to defend those she loves no matter what after locking herself in her room and crying uncontrollably after Naru's exile. The elders of the Hyuge clan were shocked when she smashed Neji's ass into the ground the very next day, and they never again brought up the caged bird seal in front of her. Despite his usual laziness, Shikamaru was able to outscore every player in the Konoha 11 in Shogi at the same time. However, since he began dating Temari, the Kage's older sister, he had been focusing more on strengthening his physical stamina and chakra reserves. Temari's delivery of that bit of news had not amused Gaara. To his delight, Shoji assumed Naru's reputation as having an endless supply of ramen. When Sasuke and Sakura began dating, Ino had moved past her crush on him, but she still harbored resentment toward Sakura for it. Neji became the only other member of the Konoha 11 to achieve the rank of Jonin after Hinata defeated him and he gave up all belief in fate. His relationship with Tenten was also somewhat beneficial. After they moved in together, Tenten became even more of a weapon nerd than she was before Neji banned her from carrying any weapons into their bedroom. Lee remained Lee, yelling, "Youth this," and "Youth that," wherever he went. Neji and Tenten eventually asked Jiraiya for a silence seal, and ever since, their operations, particularly the infiltration operations, have been more successful. Last but not least, Kakashi barely changed at all. He was still late for everything except the releases of the most recent Icha Icha series of smut books, even though he occasionally reads Jiraiya's only non-smut book. He makes pathetic excuses that even kids can tell he has seen them by now, and his hair still looks like it would fit on a scarecrow. His book was now green, but the other volumes were still in his shinobi pouch, sealed in a scroll. That was the only change. Unfortunately, Jiraiya's spy network hasn't been able to find her anywhere in the elemental nations. We believe that she may no longer be on this continent. Tsunade continued. Now get moving. The sooner you find her, the sooner I get to see that brat again. Although they all agreed with her that she wanted to see a certain person again, all 12 of them yelled, "Hi, Hokage-sama." After 2 weeks at sea, the ship finally spotted land. Like Naru, they came across a pirate ship, but one irate pinkette solved the issue with a shout and a single punch. Whether by accident or simply bad timing, they landed during a period of widespread civil unrest in Magnolia, which turned out to be the city where they docked. After some reconnaissance, The Konoha 11 members learned that a guild war is currently raging and that the civilian population is preparing for significant collateral damage. Fairy Tail and Phantom Lord are the competitors. They made the decision to go and offer Fairy Tail their services as mercenaries in exchange for their assistance in locating their friend who had gone missing. They discovered that the last battle would be fought in the city after reaching the ruins of the guild hall. Akamaru barked in agreement as Kiba muttered, "Man, out-timing sure sucks." Ino joked, "Since when have you been a Mr. Obvious?" A white-haired woman shouted, If you guys aren't wizards, please leave," as she passed. Magic? The shinobi band pondered. Such creatures were unknown to them. Sakura said, "Okay, any idea what that was about?" She was lifting some kind of green orb when Sasuke said, "Excuse me, but what is going on here?" Someone else responded, "There is a war going on here." They all turned to see a stunning redhead with a sword and armor approaching. Being the dog that he is, Kiba tried to flirt with her right away but was slammed with a knee to the crotch. The white-haired beauty remarked, "That was a bit mean, Erza." Erza yelled, later, "Mira, have you managed to contact anyone yet?" before turning to leave again. Mira called over and said, "I'm still trying to connect to Laxus." After one disappointing call. "What the heck is that device? It is way more advanced than our own communication devices," Ino replied. Kakashi replied, "No idea, I have never seen anything like it." Erza called, "What about Mistogen?" Mira yelled, "I can't find him," and then adjusted the sphere for another individual. "But I am able to connect to her." Erza called out to her before she left, "Please do, we will need her here ASAP." Mira took a long time to complete the calibrations and then. The sphere yelled, "What the hell? Who is T? Mira? What is going on? Why are you calling me over the telecommunication lacrima?" A loud explosion shook the ground as someone said, "I'm sorry, but we need you back here ASAP. The guild is under attack." When the shinobi hurried outside, they saw a huge building on legs pointing a huge cannon at them as they stood in the water. Erza was being carried into the medical area on a stretcher when Mira turned away. She was unable to continue because the connection abruptly ended at the mention of Erza. "Naru, we just lost Erza," she said. Before she went to the medical area to treat her friend, Mira whispered, "Just hurry and make it on time." In the meantime, Naru raced across the landscape, she thought, "Kurama. Gonna need a boost." She would reach Fairy Tail in a few hours if she continued on her current trajectory. "I heard. Try not to leave a trail of fire this time, will ya? You destroyed an entire cornfield last time," Kurama stated to her. Naru accelerated significantly as she felt his powerful chakra fill her system. Naru retorted, "Don't give a shit right now. Besides, that fire lizard, not me, set the field on fire. She would be there in a little more than 30 minutes if she continued at her current pace." Excuses, excuses. In any case, move forward. Kurama teased, "Your mate is in danger." When Kurama screamed in pain, Naru thought, "Clone number 12563, if you would." The ancient Biju roared, "Where the hell did you hide that one?" Naru chose not to respond. After 30 minutes. Jose was smiling malevolently. His Jupiter cannon was nearly full once more, and he was certain that no one could stop him this time. Erza Scarlet stopped the first blast, but she was taken straight to the infirmary. He was certain that whoever used that magic would run out of magic to do it again, even though the second blast was absorbed into some sort of void. He yelled, "Magical cannon, Jupiter, fire!" The Guildhall, or what remained of it, was struck by a blackish magic beam from the cannon for the third time that day. Like those on the beach, he believed that Fairy Tail was coming to an end. Sasuke was already making hand signals for his strongest weapon, Karyu Enden, which would be used when he fully charged the Kaden. None of the other shinobi knew what to do, and Kakashi was too exhausted to perform the Kamui once more. Abruptly, a huge purple ball struck the beam, causing a tremendous explosion. Doden. Doryuheki! Kakashi yelled, putting all of his remaining chakra into this move. The people were shielded from the majority of the blast by a number of mud and stone walls that rose from the ground. Erza said to Kakashi, whose eye twitched at the old man's remark, "Oi, old man, thanks for the save there." Sakura questioned, "Shouldn't you be in the sick bay?" "Just need to be juiced up. Mira helped with that," Erza replied. Erza said, "Now, any idea what happened?" As Mira put it, "No idea. We gained a breather there, so mind telling us who you are?" Kakashi explained, "Well, we do owe you an introduction. Alongside Jose, it would be an understatement to say that the wizard saint was indignant. Once more, something had kept his Jupiter cannon from putting an end to this unruly guild. "Find out what the fuck that was and report back to me," he yelled. The responses were, "Why yes sir, right away," and, "On it." Meanwhile, 10 miles away as she transformed back into a human, Naru remarked, "Wow, nice shot there, Kurama." "Don't mention it, though I was off mark by about 5 millimeters, Kurama sighed. Naru reassured him, saying, "Hey, cheer up, at least we managed to save them all." Kurama reminded her, "And if you don't hurry up, that cannon is going to fire again." She sped down the road toward Magnolia and then the front line, sending dust skyward. After 5 minutes, at the beach a huge source of power suddenly approached them from behind, causing Ino to twitch and Akamaru to whine. Ino called out to her fellow shinobi, "Something is coming from behind us, something powerful." Some of the mages heard her, or felt it too. "This is," Neji whispered. Hinata continued, "It can't be." They both had their Byakugans turned on, and they were both in awe of the approaching person's immense power. They were unable to see the chakra points clearly, so it was like staring at a beacon of power. A man with pink hair questioned, "What is going on with those two?" He pointed to the person approaching and said, "Are they blind? And anyway, she is with us." According to Sasuke, "How do you know?" Erza said, "He smelled her." She continued after noticing their perplexed expressions, saying, "Natsu has a nose that easily puts that of a bloodhound to shame." A big white-haired man with big muscles exclaimed, "That's right, he's a man." Sakura questioned, "And who is this approaching woman?" Everyone started to perspire when the man yelled, "She is a man as well." A kick that bore striking similarities to Lee and Guy's dynamic entry sent him flying before anyone could deny him. The figure roared, "Who the fuck are you calling a man, Elfman?" Without even waiting for a response, the figure left, saying, "Anyway, you, Natsu, Gray, and Erza are coming with me to destroy that cannon." Ino said, Who was that?" Mira, pleased to have at least one additional S rank among them, remarked, My, she arrived far earlier than expected." That didn't answer her question, so Ino pouted. The battles between Element 4 plus Gajeel, Natsu, Gray, Elfman, and Erza are canon. Naru went straight for Jose while her friends dealt with Element 4. Alongside Jose was in a foul mood once more after discovering that another S rank had joined Fairy Tail and realizing that the red demon of Fairy Tail, Naru Uzumaki, was in the Lacrima vision. She remained the biggest mystery to him among all the S ranks he had studied. She was now moving in his direction, her intentions evident at every turn. As she walked into the room, he said, "Welcome to your grave, Red Demon." Using her moniker for the Wizard Saint, Naru retorted, "More like I entered yours, Jester Jose." Naturally, this infuriated Jose greatly because, prior to becoming guild master, he had endured years of being teased for his appearance. He yelled, "Dead Blast," and hurled a purple-black magic ball at Naru. She created multiple clones of herself and dodged with ease. Jose remarked, "There it is, the magic that made you famous 6 years ago, the cloning magic." Then he launched an all-encompassing attack that damaged everything in the room, with the exception of those concealed behind the pillars. Abruptly, a right hook struck his face, causing him to crash into a wall. When did she relocate? When he noticed a Naru where he had been standing, he thought. "You should not have attacked our guild, Jose," she sounded out. Jose retorted, "And what are you going to do about it?" before unleashing yet another spell. "I am going to tear you a new one." Naru's eyes turned blood red with vertical black pupil slits, and her voice abruptly became demonic. "Dead wave," Jose yelled, and this time he was able to stop a few of her clones in the attack. However, he was immediately hit in the face again, which sent him flying across the room. "Enough!" he yelled while he closed his eyes. Naru opened them and saw that they were blackened. She responded by saying, "Going serious now, aren't we?" as some of his magic struck her unexpectedly, lightly hurting her. Jose remarked, "You have called for a disaster." Naru sensed that his magic power was increasing quickly. It quickly surpassed her present power level before leveling out a short while later. However, Naru and Jose started fighting and attacking with extreme prejudice, so she had to figure that out. Naru continued to fight for a few minutes, drawing her sword and launching more frequent attacks until Kurama finally had enough. Before Jose said anything, Kumara started to say, "Hey kid, I am giving you 4 Tails War." Jose yelled, "When I am done with you, I will turn you and all the females in your guild over to a slave guild in Bosco, before stepping up his assault. With his eye twitching in time with Naru's, Kurama deadpanned, on second thought, go all out, will you? Jose didn't see how it happened because his own magic blocked his view, but all of a sudden he found himself facing the biggest fox he had ever seen. Alongside the others as Happy carried him away, Natsu yelled, what the hell is that? The majority of the shinobi on the beach and numerous mages echoed the call. They all witnessed a huge nine-tailed fox emerge from the top of the Phantom's guild, its fur unharmed by black-purple magic attacks. The building was reduced to rubble as the fox suddenly started destroying the guild with a barrage of punches and tail swipes. And then the fox was gone as fast as it had come. That was, said Kakashi, the only one who recognized the creature. Erza said, what was that? I am not sure I am allowed to say, he replied, involuntarily pulling a particular green book out of his toolbox. Hey, that is, Erza began, gesturing visibly to the book. Isn't that part of the series that has been very popular recently? Replied Macau. Wakaba concurred, it is, but I haven't seen that one before. Since she had covertly purchased every book available and kept it in her room back in Fairy Hills, along with a few other erotic novels and smut books, Erza made the decision not to press the issue. With stars in his eyes, Kakashi questioned, you know the Icha Icha series? He said to Macau and Wakaba. They're true masterpieces, aren't they? And they both nodded. The three caught everyone's attention. The fox was completely forgotten. Their conversation was interrupted by the appearance of a redhead brandishing a sword. With her back to the shinobi, she uttered, of all the people Konoha would send, it has to be you guys. With the exception of Erza and Makarov, who had arrived in time to join the discussion between Kakashi, Macau, and Wakaba, the guild members appeared perplexed by her use of the word Konoha, while the shinobi questioned why she was aware of their origins. Kakashi turned around and Naru asked, why are you here? Kiba was overcome by hormones once more. With an arm around her shoulder, he said, hey there gorgeous. Would you like to go out with me? Do you want the short answer or the long one? Naru asked, grinning at Kiba. Kiba responded, bringing his head closer to attempt to kiss, either one will do. He howled in agony as Naru squeezed his crotch after he felt a hand suddenly grab it. With a joyful smile on her face, Naru remarked, why would I start dating you now when I never once accepted your request to do so back then? The shinobi noticed her cheeks here. What they believed to be cuts were actually birthmarks on the whiskers, which only one person they knew had. NN Naru. They exclaimed, startled. Erza said, Naru, would you mind unhandling him? Naru looked around and saw all the males holding their crotches with pained expressions, saying, the other males are starting to feel it. Naru let go and said, oh sorry. Kiba was certain that he had bruises on his balls. As if nothing had happened, Naru repeated, now, mind telling me what you are doing here? Ba-chan lifted the exile the civilian council forced upon you. We are here to invite you back to the village. Sasuke responded. Erza interrupted Sakura as she started to say, things haven't been the same without you. Then Erza crossed her arms and said, hang on, just who are you guys? Kakashi started, well, we are, but Naru completed it. Before Naru could finish, Erza appeared in front of Sakura and grabbed her by the collar. The perverted scarecrow is my former sensei. The Raven Emo and Pinky there used to be my teammates. So you are the bitch who forbade Naru from being in any relationship, Erza barked. Sakura was on the verge of tears. Sakura started, that was 7 years ago. Erza-chan, she was just jealous back then that I was managing to draw more attention than she ever could. Naru replied with a smile. Erza, like the majority of the other guild members, looked Sakura up and down abruptly. They all said, you have a point there. Sakura wanted to punch someone in the ground for some reason. Anyway, the others were my friends back then, though thinking back now, the brunette had a crush on me and stalked me during the academy days. Naru appeared to be thinking. In an attempt to conceal the blush that threatened to show through her makeup, Hinata hastily put on her Anbu mask. Erza was somehow offended by the brunette's disclosure of that information. And as for returning to Konoha, my answer is no, Naru replied. Kakashi asked, are you sure? Tsunade-sama wants to see you again. How about this? Naru whispered in Kakashi's ear before abruptly putting him in a light arm lock and pulling him away. What is she saying? And since when has she managed to become this strong? Asked Sasuke. To the confusion of the other guild members, Erza said, oh, right, You are from the elemental nations, aren't you? What was she discussing? Shikamaru inquired, you know about the elemental nations? Naru and I usually team up, and she told me and Master about her life. Erza responded. A gong sound was heard abruptly after a few guild members yelled, what are you talking about? A toad person said, pardon me, but I am here on order of the Magic Council. There was tension in the air right away. The Magic Council has heard word of an illegal war between guilds was taking place here, so we have come to get to the bottom of this. No one shifted. With a document in hand, the toad person concluded, and I also hold a warrant for the arrest of one Naru Uzumaki Namikaze. With her arms crossed and a scowl on her face, Naru stated, I will accompany you, provided you inform me of the charges against me. The toad began to perspire. The council didn't go into detail, but it has to do with some inconsistencies about your origins as well as the magic you use, the individual who spoke to the toad. With a sigh, Naru turned to face the others. Before following the toad, who didn't bother shackling Naru, she said, I'll be back. The last time that happened, Naru kicked the living daylights out of everyone in the prison where she was temporarily housed, including the warden and other prisoners. Shoji asked, is this really okay? Though something told Erza that Naru's return would be postponed this time, she stated, if she doesn't prank the council this time, she'll be back before noon tomorrow. Time-skipping Erza had begun to worry after Naru had been taken into custody by the Magic Council a week earlier. She threw herself into helping to build the new guild building in an attempt to calm her nerves. For reasons only Kakashi knew, the shinobi waited for Naru's return while lending a hand where they could. After threatening a few of the guild's weaker members, Laxus returned and departed. The relationship between Lucy and Loki was also intriguing. It was revealed that the largest playboy in fairy tale was actually a celestial spirit. Erza grinned as she recalled how easily Kiba had come off the first time Loki attempted to hit on Naru, after everything she had put him through. However, as a token of appreciation, he gave them, Lucy, Natsu, Happy, Gray, Erza, and Naru, tickets to a very costly theme park. After gathering all the testimony and concluding that Fairy Tail was not responsible for the guild war, the council inspectors eventually departed at the end of the week. By this point, the majority of the Phantom Guild members had vanished, but Jose had been taken into custody despite the fact that his spine was broken and required careful handling. The delirious mage was muttering something about scary redheads and damn huge foxes. Arg! Cried Erza. Where is she? People gave her a funny look. When Erza said, the sooner she comes, the sooner we can go to the theme park, everyone started to perspire. What theme park? Replied Naru. Erza exclaimed, oh, it's the one there on the beach that is super expensive and, wait, Naru? Before swiftly embracing her fellow redhead and squeezing her until she passed out. Where the hell have you been? Naru was able to say, shocking, not, breathing, as she sat at the table. Naru processed all that had been told to her about the previous week, when she had been occupied with the council. So, let me get this straight, Naru then responded. The reason why Loki flirted with me back then was so that he could forget about his previous owner and to drown his own misery in trying to flirt with every possible girl he lays his eyes on. That is a rather blunt way of putting it, but yes, Lucy replied. And the reason as to why he gave us those tickets instead of using them himself was because he was waiting for the time in which he could handle up to 5 girlfriends at once, but never got to that point because his life force was giving out. Naru went on. 5 GFs? Man, that guy was planning on being a dog, Kiba replied. Naru sighed before recalling something. And none of you thought to contact the council about this? Then I wouldn't have had to go through that punishment promotion of theirs. She grabbed her bag, took out a package, and threw it at Makarov. Old man, the council gave this to me, but I have no idea on how to wear it at this time as it will be embarrassing. When Makarov heard her final words, he naturally imagined something that would have pleased Jiraiya and Kakashi. His face and thoughts froze at what he saw when he carefully opened the package to peek inside. Erza's face was nearly as red as her hair as she asked, Nay, Naru, I was wondering, would you like to accompany me to that new ramen stand that opened recently? Naru received a nod and said, oh, you mean the one there next to the flower shop on the main road? You wouldn't enjoy it there. The food isn't great and weapons aren't allowed, neither is armor. Naru glanced at Erza. I checked it out before arriving at the guild. The majority of the mages and all of the shinobi sympathized with Erza, but they were also shocked that it took so long for someone to ask. At times, it hurt to watch these two interact. Despite her disappointment, Erza reminded herself that more opportunities would soon arise because, after all, People visit resorts to create happy memories. She then stood up and pulled a sobbing Naru out the door, pausing just long enough to yell at Natsu, Gray, Lucy, and Happy, saying, quote, "Get your asses in gear and pack your bags. We're leaving within an hour." After exchanging glances, the aforementioned individuals stood up and ran. They didn't want to be in Erza's crosshairs when he got mad. The other mages grinned, since Naru usually took Erza on missions. It was painful to watch, but it seemed like the roles had been reversed for once. After 10 minutes, when Mira removed the package from Makarov's grasp, his mind was able to restart. THTHTH, he started, causing the mages and shinobi to assemble around him. Makarov yelled, "That brat has been made a wizard saint?" Those closest to him felt blood pouring from their ears, and those who had approached him were now regretting it. Time skipping, the 6 fairy tale mages came through the theme park's gate with a collective, "Whoa." As it turned out, the tickets that Loki gave them also included free and unrestricted access to all of the park's attractions, including the casino, as well as accommodations in the VIP suites. The owners and managers would have likely begun remodeling the casino if they had known Naru would be visiting. It would have been less expensive than having Naru there. She had already purchased 7 casinos because she used the money she made to buy them, converting them into information hubs for her personal information network and a source of pocket money. Eventually, the other casino owners dubbed her the legendary Drainer. If they had realized that Naru's only surviving relative was the complete opposite, they would have likely asked to switch places with her. However, the aforementioned redhead was now enjoying the beach while sunbathing in a rather daring orange 2-piece bikini. She moved occasionally and relished the men's blushing faces and the women's envious looks as they watched her breasts jiggle with each movement. Erza, wearing a matching bikini made of armored scales, sat next to her. Since Erza wanted something that fit into the category of armor and Naru tried to get her to wear something revealing, it was the only compromise Erza would have permitted. Though not nearly as many as Naru, Erza was still receiving a lot of looks and glares, and she felt just as intimidated by them as an irate Happy. Lucy and Happy participated in a number of the competitions the guys were holding, including the sand castle building competition, the volleyball match, in which Naru and Erza teamed up against all 4 of them and still completely pawned them, for obvious reasons, and, much to Lucy's delight, the sun tanning competition, where the goal was to see who could get tanned first. After Natsu and Gray cheated by using their respective magics to either melt the sand into glass or freeze it to keep its shape, Happy miraculously won the sandcastle competition. Only when Natsu and Gray employed their magics once more, Gray creating a huge magnifying glass-like structure out of ice and Natsu creating a tiny sun above it, did Lucy succeed in winning the tanning competition. The light was then directed at Lucy by Gray. She kicked them in the nuts as a token of appreciation. Happy got that final bit on camera at Naru's earlier request. Erza, who was now sporting sunglasses, said, "So tell me, Naru, what have you been doing since you got arrested?" Squeezing her breasts against the recliner, Naru said, "Oh right, you don't know yet." She then moved once more, this time onto her stomach, giving the male onlookers nosebleeds. Naru turned to face her friend, teammate and declared, "Well, in short, I fought this blueberry-haired guy with a red tattoo on his face and then had to fight this one bald guy to get a position as one of the wizard saints. Rank 9 if I remember correctly." Erza gave her a startled look before he collapsed from the recliner and began trembling Naru. She demanded, What are you saying?" Nobody was able to criticize her. She had recently learned that Naru was now a wizard saint after having fought and most likely defeated Jelal and whoever this bald guy is. Additionally, Naru blushed as her bra came loose and fell off as she increased the frequency of the shacking. She screamed, "Kya!" and moved to cover herself, but her arm motion caught Erza's head and shoved her into Naru's cleavage, causing the armored redhead to blush like a certain Hyuga used to do at the guild. Erza told her friend, "Nah, Naru, you are going to break my neck. This feels really good, so soft and bouncy." One thought crossed the minds of everyone watching, and it was all aimed at Erza. Happy bitch. Erza and Naru's room that night. Naru had been describing her week's activities for the past hour or so. It would be an understatement to say that Happy, Gray, and Lucy were taken aback. Meanwhile, Natsu. Fight me, crash, flick, he was short-lived. The poor dragon slayer was just finger-flicked in the temple by Naru, who was learning to use the same monstrous strength that the old drunk hag she used to call Ba-chan possessed, and it scared the living daylights out of him. Kurama was trying to hide inside the seal. Happy exclaimed with joy, New record, before realizing that Natsu might not make it if Naru decided to go all out against him. Erza, meanwhile, started crying. The council had wanted to use a Therion to blast a strange tower in the middle of the ocean, and Naru had been tasked with investigating it. After beating the shit out of practically everyone in it, with the exception of Jelal, who turned out to be identical to Sigrain from the council, she learned the truth about the building and added a few surprises. He fought hard, even making Naru cooperate with Kurama, who enjoyed the struggle. Following Naru's victory in their battle, she decided to use the explosive tags excessively and attacked the tower and the island it was on after evacuating everyone she could find. As a result, she had released Erza from the years of suffering she had endured, and her artificial eye began to well up with tears for the first time. Flick. YEOWTCH, this time, Gray was the one hurt. Erza's face had turned blue, and when she looked up, he was holding his groin and was once again naked. With pain in her voice, Lucy uttered, "I am a girl and it hurts to watch." Naru and Erza turned when they heard a knock on the door. "Come in," called Naru. When Erza's old friends, all of whom had various injuries, entered the room, her eyes widened. "Sorry, Erza-chan, but they didn't believe me that I could protect you and had to be a little rough on them." Simon remarked, "You left Jelal in an even worse state." Miliana said, "It still left me not feeling spiffy." Then she saw the happy person and lost her mind. Erza forgot about her other plans and spent the next hour and day catching up with her old friends. After a few days, when the vacation group got back to Magnolia, they were pleasantly surprised to see that the other guild members, aside from Natsu, had completed their new guild building. Someone threw a mug of ale at him after Mira gave him a brief tour, during which Natsu continued to pout and complain that things were different. This sparked another guild fight, which instantly lifted Natsu's spirits. While Naru was talking about the new recruits, Erza was talking to Makarov about some of them, frightening the living daylights out of them. Long before the battle with Fairy Tail, Juvia and Gajeel had heard from Jose about her fighting skills and had received clear instructions not to fight her before the attack on Fairy Tail. They believed he was saying she wasn't worth fighting for. The next thing they knew, she had vanquished Jose and demolished their guild headquarters. She had then been promoted to the rank of Wizard Saint and was now in front of them, offering them a comprehensive list of or else's to pick from in the event that they abandoned Fairy Tail. They were persuaded to remain in the guild for life by the deadly aura and the sweat smile. Kiba, who had chosen to hide after sensing the aura's fringes, was hiding behind an overturned table nearby. After assisting in the construction of the new building, the shinobi made the decision to stay in Fury for a while, at least until they could find a ship to purchase and return to Hai no Kuni, and take a brief vacation while also spending time with Naru. As a result, the majority of them had captured a Naru clone and were conversing with it. Only Sakura, who had joined Sasuke and his clone, and Kiba, who was still hiding behind a table, had failed to capture a clone. The doors suddenly flew open, and a frog that resembled the one who had arrived to arrest Naru entered. "Special delivery for Wizard Saint Namikaze Uzumaki Dono," she stated. "Already?" Naru asked, having already forgotten about the two former phantom mages. The frog handed her a scroll bearing the council's seal and said, "Yes, ma'am. This scroll contains all the details." After reading the contents quickly, Naru's power was radiating in rage, her unoccupied hand clenched, and her eyebrows began to twitch. "They want me to move to another guild to maintain the power balance?" Naru responded. The guild yelled, "They what?" The frog said, "I am afraid so. What shall I say as your answer?" Naru just said, "No," the frog started to say, "As a wizard saint, you have to," but Naru cut her off by taking the wizard saint chain off her neck. Naru growled, startling everyone in the building, most of whom didn't think she would value them that much. "Tell those old bastards, minus Yamaji-san of course, that I'd rather step down as a wizard saint than leave my family and my guild." Too stunned to speak, the toad could only accept the necklace and walk away in silence. Naru eventually felt the guild's shortest man come toward her. Makarov informed her, "The council will be after your head for this." "Fuck the council. They are about as strong as an average S-rank mage at best. Me having made it into the Wizard Saints means that I am most likely stronger than them," Naru replied. Makarov remarked, "I wouldn't be so sure about that. The current chairman was once a competitor until I defeated him and earned my own place as a member of the Wizard Saints." Makarov laughed as Naru remarked nonchalantly, that explains why he had such a large stick up his ass." A fresh voice asked, "What is this I am hearing about you joining the Wizard Saints?" Naru turned to face Laxus, who had come inside. Before making his way to the second level, Naru remarked, Laxus-kun. Yeah, That info is old now. I doubt I am a member of that order anymore. Laxus inquired, what happened, Gigi? Makarov replied, they wanted her to transfer to another guild. Concerned about what might occur, Laxus questioned, and she didn't go and kill them. 1. Makarov remarked, I was asking myself the same thing. The following day, people discovered their guild headquarters destroyed and the bodies of their severely wounded guildmates scattered all over the place after another guild attempted to coerce Naru into leaving Fairy Tail and joining them last year. In the meantime, Naru examined the S-rank mission board and ultimately selected one. She leapt to the ground and landed beside Erza, who was going to go upstairs to find Naru. As she walked away, Naru showed him the request and said, Gigi, I am going on this job. See you later. Not wanting to fall behind again, Erza ran after her and yelled, Naru, wait up. With the exception of those from Konoha, everyone looked down, their happy disposition gone. Rather, the mages were all furious with the Magic Council for having the audacity to remove one of their own. Everyone in fury knew that Fairy Tail was the epitome of family. If you threaten one, you're threatening the guild as a whole. The council had obviously forgotten that. At least the majority of them. There was only one response to a question posed by one of the shinobi. Naru has found a family here worth more to her than anything in the world. In the meantime, Naru Erza yelled, Naru, wait. From the guild, she had followed Naru all the way to Naru's home on Magnolia's north side. As usual, Naru's ability to afford such a large building impressed Erza. Erza, just, come in, Naru said, attempting to conceal her rage. Back at the guild, it had gotten so bad that she had to wear a seal-less henge to hide her anger, much like Gaara was covering his face with sand to hide his bloodlust. Erza beckoned into Naru's office after following her upstairs to the second floor. Erza was taken aback because she had never visited Naru's office before. She took a sharp breath when she saw a framed agreement between the book publisher and Naru hanging on the wall next to a full set of Icha Icha books in their first edition, along with other unpublished volumes that were all signed by the author. When Erza realized she was reading the work of her friend, Crush, she flushed. Seeing where her eyes were, Naru informed her, before you ask, I am not the author of the Icha Icha series, that goes to my godfather. Erza flushed when she heard the words, and I also know that you have copies of all the published versions hidden away under your bed. With a sudden sense of exhaustion, Naru asked, now, what did you want to talk about? Erza could swear that Naru had aged 20 years in the last 20 minutes based on the way she looked at her. Uncertain of how to express what she wanted to say, Erza opened and closed her mouth. Before deciding, she glanced around and noticed a bottle of sake on a nearby table. Erza got up and went to the bottle of sake, and Naru glanced at her. Naru started, Erza, what are you, as Erza drained the bottle all at once. Erza had a notoriously low tolerance for alcohol, so it was obvious that she was intoxicated as she approached Naru because alcohol was starting to enter her system. Erza straddled her lap, facing Naru, and Naru could smell it on her. Erza said, just shut up and let me do this. Her voice was a little slurred, and she gave Naru a sloppy kiss, which Naru returned with much more skill because she didn't have any alcohol in her system and wasn't likely to get drunk. Naru felt as if all of the tension had suddenly been released from her body. Erza felt as if all of her concerns from the previous few years had vanished. She began to move her hands up and down Naru's body as she felt her body heat up a lot, but Naru stopped her. Not liking that the alcohol was getting to Erza's head, she told her friend, not like this, Erza-chan. She pulled out a piece of paper with a unique seal on it and gave Erza a forehead slap. Erza, suddenly unable to be affected by the alcohol, asked, what is this? A special seal that prevents alcohol from affecting the mind. Naru replied, and as much as I'd like to continue this, I'd rather do it when you're not smelling of sake. And besides, we have a job to do. Erza smiled despite blushing when she realized what she had done. Erza inquired, speaking of which, what is the job? There is a dark guild terrorizing a nearby town whose guild doesn't have the manpower to fight back, Naru continued. Erza uttered the words, let's go then. Her mouth dropped when Naru pulled a secret lever, causing the wall across from the Icha Icha books to retract, exposing a trove of armor and weapons. When Naru started stripping before donning her standard combat armor, which Erza had seen numerous times and had to concede was more revealing than her own, the knight armor, her surprise turned to embarrassment. Naru had told her that she was having trouble finding comfortable clothes that were functional because her body was more developed than hers. Unlike Naru's armor, hers at least covered her midriff. Naru had already seized her katana, 2 first aid packs, some emergency rations, and dozens of kunai and shuriken before Erza could register it. After concealing the weapons once more, Naru said, "Let's go then," and left. Erza followed numbly. After 2 days a day before the Fantasia Festival, Naru and Erza made their way back, and while Erza was enlisted to do a dance wearing some of her bold armor and floating swords, Naru chose to observe from the rooftops. As expected, the mission had gone smoothly. The town was rather dilapidated when they got there. They went to the only inn that was still open, reserved a room for themselves, and interacted with the people there in an attempt to learn as much as they could about this evil guild. They discovered a startling amount of information from this, including the fact that the Dark Guild operated according to a schedule and that their next visit was anticipated to take place the following day. They made the decision to end the day in light of that. As expected, the Dark Guild returned the following day, but Naru and Erza demanded that the villagers turn them over right away so they could get to know them better. Erza and Naru learned all they needed to know from the perverted faces. In the brief and vicious battle that followed, Naru and Erza easily outclassed the members of the Dark Guild. Not even their so-called S-rank member could compare to either of them. After a brief interrogation, Naru discovered their hiding place. That wasn't standing by noon either, and the nearby Mage Knight Battalion had been notified. On the way back, Naru concluded that Erza was unquestionably free of alcohol and they resumed their makeout session, but neither of them went any farther. Fortunately, they were alone in the train cabin, so they were largely unaffected, until the porter passed by and collapsed with a nosebleed. In the meantime, the Magic Council Grand Doma, the Magic Council's chairperson, questioned, "Are you sure she said that?" Holding up the round object, the frog said, "Yes, she even gave me her medallion." Concerned, the council members glanced at one another. They were aware that Fairy Tail took their family ties very seriously, but they did not anticipate that one would prioritize these ties over their role and responsibility as wizard saints. And as a result, they now had a loose cannon, which they were unable to permit, but they were also partially to blame. The conversation eventually descended into a dispute, with one side seeking to hold Naru accountable for her impudence and the other side hoping to maintain some degree of control over her while allowing Naru to stay in Fairy Tail. Grand Doma had to call for a vote at the end, and he was the one who had to cast the final vote. He sighed as he considered the arguments made by each side and made the decision to support keeping Naru as a saint. He reminded the council of their current predicament, oración cease, before another dispute could start. "Nay, Dobet, Naru. Are you sure that you don't want to return with us?" Sasuke responded. Naru was holding him up so she could say goodbye to her before he and the other shinobi boarded their ship to return to the elemental nations. Before giving him an embrace, Naru said, "Nothing you say can change my mind, you know that, Sasuke. I have made a new life here, one that I cannot in good conscience leave behind. That does not mean that I won't try to come by for a visit, brother." Sasuke recalled their final exchange before she vanished from the elemental nations and said, You still remember that, sis?" Rewind. Naru turned to face her old team as they came toward her on the water. She glared at Sasuke and said, "What are you doing here? Look, I know that I am the reason why you were banished, and I think that the morons on the civilian council made one hell of a mistake." Sasuke told her the truth. Sakura, still torn between duty and family, pushed out, including my mother. On the one hand, her mother had voted in favor of Naru's banishment. However, she remains a member of the family. Sakura and Sasuke stared at Kakashi in disbelief as he started, "And if these two here will forgive me my breaching an S-rank law." Calmly, Naru told him, "If it is about who I am and who my parents were, don't bother. You can thank a certain fox inside my gut for that." "You can speak to the Kyuubi?" Kakashi inquired, incredulously. Before opening a scroll and giving it to Kakashi, Naru said, "Since Wave, yes. And he isn't so bad once you get to know him better. This contains all of the information Kurama knows about the attack 12 years ago." "Where will you go?" Sasuke asked as he and Sakura boarded the boat. "If I told you that, then there is always a chance that Danzo will find me," Naru replied. He sighed and gave her a hug. The words, "I am sorry for lying to you before," came from Sasuke. Both Sakura and Naru questioned, "What do you mean?" Sasuke believed that whatever Naru had written on the scroll was more fascinating than his Icha books, but Kakashi had his nose deep inside it. "A few days ago, when I called you my best friend, I lied," Sasuke replied. "I just couldn't tell you." The end of the flashback. Naru concluded the quote by saying, "No matter where you are, you will always be my sister." Shikamaru muttered, but he couldn't help but smile. "That is a troublesome vow you made there, Sasuke." Yush. When we get back, I shall celebrate this youthful family bond by. Naru's silent seal stopped him before he could say anything more. Tenten jumped on her right away and gave her cheek kisses in appreciation for finally getting Lee to stop talking. Shino and Neji were the next to board the ship after Kiba and Akamaru. After bidding each other farewell, the Ino Shikacho trio took the stage. After that, Kakashi and Hinata were left with Naru as Tenten, Sasuke, and Sakura boarded. Hinata gave the brunette a brief embrace while learning Naru's scent, saying, "Naru-kun, do us a favor and come visit soon." Naru whispered to her, "Nay, Hinata-chan, unless you want to face Erza's wrath, I'd suggest you let go." Naru informed her, "And I will come visit when I have a few months off." Hinata then boarded the ship with her fellow shinobi. "And you, sensei," that is what Naru said. She handed him several scrolls and said, "Take these." When Kakashi noticed that each scroll had a name attached, he inquired, "What are these?" He read the names on the scrolls. Bachan, Ero Senin, Ichiraku's, Uruka-sensei, Gaara. Before handing him another scroll, Naru said, "Please deliver these to each of them. This will allow us to send messages to each other." When Kakashi opened it, he saw what appeared to be an extremely intricate seal. He questioned, "What does this do?" "It is a transportation seal based on my father's Hiraishin barrier just you, only I have modified it to carry small items and made it compatible with almost anyone's chakra, meaning you and Bachan can send me letters from time to time, as well as receive them." Naru spoke quietly. At that, Kakashi's visible eye widened, and then he laughed. This redhead was referred to as Konoha's #1 unpredictable knuckle-headed hyperactive kunoichi, as he was reminded once more. She embraced him too, then picked him up and threw him onto the boat, reminding him of it once more. His face hit the mast as he made a spectacular landing. "That was for the times you threw out the instant ramen in my traveling bag during missions," she yelled over. Kakashi was momentarily stunned before he burst out laughing, followed by Sakura and Sasuke. They were all unaware that she still harbored resentment toward that. Still, as their ship headed out to sea, Naru remained at the pier. Later on in the day, an hour later, when Naru returned to the Guildhall, Makarov and another of those talking walking frogs were surrounded by people. She went inside and asked, "What is going on?" The frog approached Naru and returned her medallion, saying, "The council has decided to withdraw their order for you to be transferred to another guild as well as letting you retain your seat as a member of the Wizard Saints. In return, they request that you aid an alliance of light guilds in defeating a cornerstone of the Balam Alliance, Oracion Cease, as well as major dark guild hunts in the future." Naru gazed first at the master and then at the frog. "You sure? Which guilds will form the alliance?" she inquired. "The alliance will consist of us, Lamia Scale, Blue Pegasus and Kate Shelter," replied Makarov. Naru inquired, "And whom are we sending? Other than me, of course." Makarov uttered, "Erza, Natsu, Gray, Happy and Lucy." None of them were there when Naru turned to look around. Makarov stated, "Oh, they already left for the rendezvous in the Green Sea," in response to his implicit query. Naru caught him by the shoulders and moved more quickly than his eyes could follow. She practically yelled, "They what?" Makarov informed her, "Master Bob has a vacation house there." Naru ran for the exit, and people flew. "Well, that went well." The frog questioned him, "Did you always have a talent for overstatements?" The frog started to perspire as the entire guild deadpanned, "Nope, that well and truly went well." If Naru had handled the news well in that case, what was her behavior like in the opposite situation? After racing home, Naru put on her combat gear, gathered a large number of kunai and shuriken, several decks of explosive tags, enough food for several days, a few first aid kits, and some extra clothes, strapped her sword to her back, and left the house to go to the train station. She found out that her friends had already boarded the previous train 45 minutes prior, and that the next one wouldn't be arriving for another 2 hours. Naru complained and made the decision to run along the tracks. After 3 hours, Naru got to Master Bob's Green Sea vacation house just in time to witness Erza thrashing 3 playboys she knew as the Trimans of Blue Pegasus. Likely because they had made an attempt to court her. She then gave Ichiya, a short, ugly S-rank mage from Blue Pegasus with whom Naru had once had a very unpleasant working relationship, a haymaking punch. Ichiya flew in the direction of the other newcomers who were in front of Naru. A white-haired man who was also redhead grabbed Ichiya's head and covered it with ice, but Naru stopped when she saw the final individual, even though he was facing the opposite direction. When she reached the entrance, she said, "Well, I'll be. Seems like Lamia Scale has sent some muscle." Everyone looked at her, and while the bald Lamia scale mage was just shocked, the fairy tale mage's eyes widened in recognition. And whom exactly are you, weakling? The man with the white hair said. One. The bald mage said, Leon, do you have a death wish? The redhead from Lamia said, what do you mean, Jura-san? Well, Sherry, this is Uzumaki Naru, S-rank mage from Fairy Tail, Jura said. Must be either a very weak S-rank or newly appointed for me not to have heard of her, Leon stated. Gray tried in vain to hold back a laugh. Lucy took a step back. Happy and Natsu were giggling uncontrollably. Erza was just grinning. Then you should go and research some more. Jura replied. For she is the mage who defeated me and took the 9th spot amongst the wizard saints. Isn't that right, Naru of the 1,000 Clones Dono? And, before you answer, promise me you won't kill him anytime soon. Naru smiled and said, it was an enjoyable fight, Iron Rock Jura-san. And can I at least beat the shit out of this guy? No one calls me a weakling without proving they are stronger than me. Paling, Leon said, wait, you are the one who defeated Jura-san. To the surprise of all those who were unaware, Naru simply removed her medallion. Jura replied to Naru, later, after this mission. Leon became as pale as paper. Naru approached her fellow guild members and stood next to Erza, who simply grinned at her. So, is there anyone we are missing? She asked. She whispered to her, sorry, I'm late. It is all right. You were saying your farewells. There was nothing to be done there, Erza responded. 3 men in blue suits surrounded Naru before they could finish their conversation. Who are you, beautiful? Inquired Hibiki, the group leader. Naru did her best not to give him a glare. Kurama was face-palming inside. An additional group of playboys, he thought. The dark-skinned one, Ren, said, are you single? If so, we could show you a great time tonight. Naru was now fighting the impulse to strike someone. Kurama thought, someone who wants to be beaten to a bloody pulp, this one. According to Eve, who was the shortest, or you could stay with us, forever. Naru's face was shadowed by her hair as she looked down. Kurama pondered, and this one has a death wish. Meanwhile, the 3 playboys gazed expectantly at her. She was smiling when she eventually looked up. Let me tell you this once, but I am already in a relationship. Naru replied. And even if I wasn't, I'd never go out with weaklings such as yourselves. At that second statement, the 3 men felt as if a lightning bolt had struck them. Wait, you aren't single anymore? Since when? The Weekly Sorcerer still lists you as #1 most sought-after single female in Fury, followed shortly by a tie of Mirajane-sama and Erza-chan, Ichiya responded. He heard Naru say, the fact that you know this makes me want to puke. Erza was in agreement. As soon as Ichiya opened its mouth, Kurama severed the connection. Ichiya pulled out a small glass bottle and said, well, let me fix this with some perfume, but Naru and Erza sent him flying. Their shout was, in your dreams. Naru is mine, buddy, Erza reflected. The 3 playboys yelled, Captain, before attacking Erza and Naru. The sound of Naru slapping them made even Jura cringe. As if nothing had happened, Naru asked, now, back to my earlier question, is there anyone still missing? While holding a bruised Hibiki by the collar in one hand, obviously forgetting he was there. After quickly counting the number of people present, Jura declared, everyone is here except for the people from Cage Shelter. Ichiya, who somehow showed no signs of being punched about like a rag doll, said, people, I heard that it is a single mage that they were sending. A single mage? Yelled Lucy. How powerful is this guy if he is coming alone? They all heard a person fall onto the carpet close to the entrance at that very moment. They turned to see a young brunette standing up and massaging her son nose while wearing a long dress and winged sandals. She timidly introduced herself, saying, Oi, sorry for being late. My name is Wendy Marvell. I am the representative from Cage Shelter. Sternly, Erza said, Naru, don't. Naru complained, but Erza, she is adorable. The girl was so adorable that she had wanted to go give her a hug. After re-establishing contact, Kurama wished he was outside the seal so he could fulfill his cantainer's desire. From the entrance, a fresh voice said, she is also a complete wimp, Mrs. My boobs are too big. Everyone watched as a white cat entered, and Naru naturally saw Happy's astonished expression. Oh, she would soon be having fun with the tiny blue ball of fur. Naru said, nay, chan to her girlfriend. Erza questioned, what? She caught the attention of several others. Everyone in the room flushed when Naru asked, are my boobs really too big? Erza responded, Well, to be honest, they could be a bit bigger and instantly glowed brighter than a red light bulb, while Lucy and every other spectator, aside from Jura, who merely shook his head, went flying with a nosebleed. The blonde was a pervert, but who would have guessed that? Wendy said, "Charles, you came?" "Of course I did. I can't leave a crybaby like you alone, now can I?" said Charles. Naru hurried over to give Wendy a teddy bear hug after she pouted a little. She exclaimed, "Su-cu-u-u-te," as she sent Wendy through marshmallow hell. Naturally, this made Erza a little envious because she recalled the time Naru had done the same to her at the resort following a wardrobe malfunction. However, she had to concede that Wendy's pout was adorable. Erza said, "Hey, let go of her," but Charles didn't seem to share her opinion. With an angry look, Naru said, "What are you? Her mother?" Wendy, meanwhile, was enjoying the hug because it made her think of home, but she was unsure of what to do in this circumstance. Wendy assured her friend, "It's okay, Charles, she didn't hurt me." Charles just kept glaring at Naru. "Well, now that everyone is here, let's get on with the briefing," Jura replied. Hibiki triggered his archive magic, bringing up a screen that looked like a keyboard, and began tapping buttons. 6 pictures of 6 different people soon surfaced. "This is what we know about Awakens," he said. Hibiki displayed a picture of a man with a long chin, a mohawk hairstyle, a vest, and jeans. The one with the weird hairstyle and wearing glasses is called Racer. He is known to utilize some form of self-acceleration magic that enables him to move faster than the eye can see. He wore sunglasses over his eyes. Hibiki went on, revealing a white-haired woman dressed in clothing that would make any pervert proud. The hot chick is called Angel. We are unsure about what type of magic she uses, only that she is said to be able to look into your soul. Ichiya was staring, much to everyone's surprise. Her expression made Naru think of Orochimaru from the Death Forest. Hibiki showed them a picture of a big, orange-haired man with a blocky face that reminded Naru and Erza of someone, but they couldn't remember who it was. The large man is called Hot Eye. He is a monster already with just his earth magic, but with his eye magic, which allows him to see far distances as well as seeing through solid objects. He is said to have never lost to a Light Guild mage before. His reason for fighting is none other than profit. He will, and has, wiped out entire army legions just for that reason. Natsu clenched his teeth at the sight of the red-haired male with slanted eyes. Next we have Cobra and his pet and combat companion, Cubelios. He uses an unknown type of magic, though it is suspected to be a close combat type and is said to have a sense of hearing and smell even more sensitive than that of a dragon slayer. Natsu remarked, "Man, that guy has some evil-looking slanted eyes there. Your eyes are identical." Everyone thought. Hibiki pointed to another mage, who was dozing off on a floating carpet, and remarked, "We don't know much about this one, other than that his name is Midnight." Hibiki displayed a picture of a white-haired, brown-skinned man with tribal markings on his face, holding a staff with a skull holding an orb in its mouth. The last one is Brain, their guildmaster. We also don't know much about him other than that he may be Midnight's father. "This guy," Naru whispered to herself low. Whispering, "What is it?" Erza asked. "He used to work in the Magic Council's R&D department. I encountered him once a few years ago on a delivery mission from a council member to one of their research buildings in the mountains in the north of Fury." Naru replied. "He was the head of creating magical seals back then." Erza questioned, "Are you sure? There is no way I wouldn't forget him. I have no proof, but I think he may have been involved in human experimentation back then. Kurama told me that evil intent was pouring out of him like a broken dam." Naru responded. Loudly, Natsu asked her, "Who is Kurama?" He fled behind Lucy after she gave him a glare. Naru told him to mind your own business. She was perspiring on the inside, though, as the enormous fox yelled at her for nearly revealing their alliance. Ichiya started explaining their strategy to them. The Blue Pegasus magical bomber, Christina, would fly over and bomb the location into Kingdom Come after the mages banded together to locate their base of operations. Naru questioned, "What about the members of Awakens?" Natsu smashed the doors apart before anyone could respond. He left a cloud of dust in his wake and yelled, "Who gives a damn? Let's just beat these guys already." Erza, along with Gray, Happy, and Lucy, started to follow Natsu, saying, "That fool, let's go." Leon and Sherry followed, unwilling to be left behind, followed by the Trimans and, finally, Wendy, who was being carried by Charles, who, like Happy, had the ability to conjure wings. Whatever this guy was, Naru and Jura were left with the short. Naru muttered, "Oh well, Might as well keep these guys out of trouble, and then jogged steadily after. Not long after Naru got there just in time to witness Brain pointing his staff at Wendy as the members of their makeshift alliance were taken over by Oracion's members. It turned out to be some sort of capturing magic, and she acted instinctively by speeding down the road and avoiding the incoming magic. With a grunt of disapproval, Brain decided to call a retreat when he noticed Jura and Ichiya coming. They could come later and take Wendy away. "Naru!" exclaimed Erza. Soon after, there were shouts of "Naru" from Lucy, Gray, and Happy. Brain yelled, "Retreat! That wizard saint of theirs is almost here." Naru was taken with the members of Oración as they vanished with a final outburst of dark and green magic. The Trimans and the two cats were almost hit by that last magic attack. Fortunately, Jura decided to show up at that time, followed by a severely battered Ichiya. "Jura-san." Ren exhaled a sigh. Happy said, "Talk about timing." "Don't mind me. What are we going to do about Naru Dono?" he replied. Natsu said, "Don't worry about her." The others, excluding his fellow guild members, gazed at him in perplexity. "She will be all right." Wendy said, "What do you mean?" "Oh, that's right, you weren't." Gray started, but they turned their attention when they heard a cry of pain. Happy, Lucy, Natsu, and Gray yelled, "Erza," and ran to their friend, who was clutching her arm, which was turning a sickly purple color. Then Natsu sniffed the arm and said, "Poison." Wendy ran over to the injured redhead and said, "Allow me." In the meantime, Naru scowled at the 6 wizards who had captured her and used anti-magic cuffs to chain her to the wall. "Of all the people who had to get in the way, it just had to be you, Crimson Demoness. Naru of the 1,000 clones." Brain was grumbling. She had always been a wild card, but he had hoped that Angel's Gemini would be able to delay her and Jura's arrival for a little while longer. "Racer, go get the package from the hideaway. Once you return, I will go and retrieve the Sky Sorceress from those weaklings." The Mohawk man said, "Roger," and vanished. As Naru entered her mindscape, she thought, "Hey, Kurama, you awake?" "In the mindscape of Naru. Have been since you allowed yourself to be captured, Kit." Kurama replied. "What plan do you have to get out of this mess?" "Feel like making a seasoned criminal wet his pants?" said Naru. Kurama smirked as he looked at her. "Scaring someone? I'm game. What have you got planned?" As Wendy finished working on Erza, she let out a sigh. The others had been surprised to learn that she was an expert in healing magic in addition to using dragon-slaying magic. Consequently, Erza's recovery had been easy. While the others discussed their next course of action, the redhead was now dozing off. Alongside Naru thought to Kurama, "And then we beat the living shit out of him." Kurama paused to reflect. He acknowledged, "That is a really well thought out plan. But you should only enact this plan when you are not surrounded by this many S-ranks." "Yeah, I am waiting for them to leave before breaking these chains," Naru pondered. Racer reappeared at that moment with a T-shaped coffin. "This thing is so heavy that I couldn't get any decent speed," he was grumbling. Brain said, "Don't worry, Racer. Get some rest now." He left the cave after saying, "I am heading out to capture the Sky Maiden." Cobra questioned, "What should we do about the captive?" "I am sure that Hot Eye would love to take her head to the bounty hunter's outpost nearby," Brain responded. "As in, just her head?" With gleeful eyes, Hot Eye said, "With pleasure." And Naru made her move while everyone's eyes were on him. She shattered the cuffs with a loud crack, snap, sending fragments flying at Hot Eye and Angel, who were obstructing her path to the exit. However, they both ducked. After shouting, "Out of the way, bitch!" Naru punched Angel in the face with a haymaker, sending her flying into the wall and partially caving in. When she was outside, she created multiple clones and dispersed them so the dark mages couldn't follow her. She was trying to reassemble with her allies after making her getaway in a matter of minutes. Then she noticed the knife, which had a sickly purple blade, protruding from her side. "Oh, for fuck's sake, Kurama, one of these bastards managed to hit me with a poisoned knife," she was thinking. "Already on it. Damn, this poison is way different from the ones back in Elemental Nations. Your immunity is useless against it." Kurama grumbled. "I am managing to purge it slowly, but you had best find a place to rest or this could take a while." "Fantastic. Do you notice that enormous tree over there?" Naru pondered, "I'll sleep in its branches." "I don't want to explain to Erza that her girlfriend has passed away," Kurama advised her, adding, "Don't strain yourself too much, okay? Although she is frightening, she is far less frightening than you." Naru thought, "Now there is an idea. Now is not the time to consider pulling any practical jokes." she was yelled at by Kurama. Alongside the others, Natsu, Gray, and Happy used Natsu's nose to track Naru toward the Oracion 6 base of operations after the Alliance mages divided up to cover more ground. Together with the other team, Ren, Eve, and the creature, Jura, Leon, and Sherry set out to find Nirvana, a powerful and ancient device that was supposedly sealed somewhere in the forest, according to Hibiki's archive. Lucy, Wendy, and Hibiki were left to protect Erza, who was still asleep. Sadly, they had little chance when Brain appeared. Hibiki was thrown into a tree, Wendy was seized in the same manner as Naru, Charles flew to seek assistance and eventually located Natsu and company, and Lucy, much to her dismay, was subjected to some form of bondage magic by Brain, which appeared to involve tying her in a turtle bondage with ropes that resembled his black magic. This naturally caused her great embarrassment, and she complained loudly enough to almost stop Brain from catching Wendy. Additionally, Erza vanished amid the fuss. Shortly after, Team find Naru and beat the shit out of everyone in the way. After defeating the Dark Guild, Naked Mummy, who at first tried to scare them by monkeying around, and Natsu's battle with Aragorn, they reached a canyon with multiple caverns in the walls, one of which was partially collapsed. In response to Gray's ice make, slide, command, Natsu enthusiastically grabbed Happy and Charles and slid all the way to the bottom. To Charlie's utter surprise, however, he arrived with a severe case of motion sickness. In the meantime, within the cave when Brain and Wendy returned, he was astounded by the condition of the place and, after opening the coffin, he left Wendy to decide for herself so that he could talk to his fellow guild members. While I was away, what the devil happened over here? Given the condition of the cave, Brain inquired. That bimbo with the red hair happened. She somehow broke the magic sealing cuffs as soon as you left, threw the pieces at us, and then used her fist to defile my angelic face, sending me through one of the support beams and into the wall. To get me out, Hot Eye had to liquefy the ground, Angel reported, growling loudly and unladylike. You said that she was just a very powerful S-rank mage, Brain. Racer replied. She wore a Wizard Saint medallion. The other mages were taken aback by Racer's remarks. Shit, I didn't know that the council would send more than one saint, we will need to, Brain gasped. Cobra said, no need for that. What are you saying? Brain inquired. With a smile that revealed his long, sharp teeth, Cobra declared, I stabbed her with one of my poisoned knives. She'll be dead within the hour. Though I don't agree with the method, I applaud your action, Cobra, Brain replied. Only issue I have is that this poison is very expensive, Cobra replied. It is specifically designed for high-level wizards, first corrupting their magic reserves then killing of their organs. And how much money are we discussing here? Weary, Hot Eye asked. A vial costs about 150 million jewels, Cobra mumbled. Then, why don't you use your own poison? Midnight, who had just woken up, inquired. Cause that stuff is so corrosive that it would eat away at the metal within seconds, Cobra replied. They were all taken aback when a now completely recovered Jelal emerged from the coffin, simultaneously rendering Wendy unconscious. Using the Lamia scale team when the conjured goblins and Sherry started lying together like old friends, Leon and Jura were as shocked as the members of the Dark Guild. Alongside Team Playboy and, while Ichiya managed to get his ass handed to him and be taken prisoner, Eve and Ren were able to eliminate another Dark Guild. He was now attempting to BS himself out of trouble as they carried him to their base of operations. Alongside Naru dreaming of ramen and playing tricks on the council, Naru was snoring lightly on a branch of the enormous tree. That night when the big tree next to Naru's rose in a pillar of black and white light, Naru was startled out of her slumber. She made an army of clones in her mindscape to comb every inch of Kurama's fur as a token of gratitude after swiftly running a self-diagnostics jutsu and concluding that all of the poison had been removed from her body. 9 of her clones then took up positions at the base of his tails, to keep him in line. When she saw Jelal and Erza standing in front of a massive magical array she had never seen before, she decided to jump down to take a closer look. Alongside Lucy woke up with a groan, exhausted from her battle with Angle, but luckily Natsu came with the cats and Wendy, who helped Hibiki recover from her injuries. Natsu then hurried off to find another man to fight before informing them that Gray was facing Racer. What is that light, anyway? As the column of magic reached the sky, Happy inquired. That is Nirvana being released from its seal, said Hibiki. Nirvana? Wendy inquired. The final passage from his archive magic was cited by Hibiki, who stated, an ancient magical weapon said to be able to change light for darkness. Those of light who have strong evil thoughts will turn to darkness, and those of darkness who have good thoughts will turn to the light. How about rage? Lucy inquired. Hibiki remarked, in general, it is defined as evil. Happy. How irate is Natsu at the moment? Lucy questioned the blue feline. Happy replied, he's pretty, oh crap, but what would he be like? Both the cat and the mage imagined a malevolent Natsu. Just come at me, regardless of who it is. I'll beat the living daylights out of you. I think he wouldn't be much different than he currently is, Lucy replied. Happy said, How about Naru-san and Erza-san? Wendy inquired. The two members of Fairy Tail vanished and then resurfaced, huddled behind a tree. I thought I'd die, Lucy mumbled. Thinking about it nearly gave me a heart attack. Happy concurred, saying, they're already frightening enough. Wendy stared at them bewildered, while Hibiki laughed silently in agreement. Yeah, but is his anger motivated by self-interest, meaning it is unfounded? Hibiki inquired. Well, he is angry because Oracion Cease hurt those he cares about, Happy replied. According to Hibiki, if he is angry for someone else's sake, then he isn't feeling any negative emotions. In that case, he may actually be safe. Lucy questioned, what about Erza and Naru? I think they would be in the same boat as Natsu, Hibiki responded. Alongside Jura was still in shock at what she saw and heard. 5 minutes prior, the big man in front of him was babbling about money this and profit, but now he was talking endlessly about love? A long-lost brother of his? When Richard reintroduced himself as Hot Eye, he explained the power of Nirvana and how it transforms darkness into light and vice versa. Jura initially believed that Hot Eye was playing tricks on him. However, despite the abrupt and unanticipated change, and Richard telling Jura that his bald head reminded him of the potatoes he and his brother used to eat, which startled Jura and left him feeling ashamed, Jura actually started to like the man for who he was. Additionally, as they approached the column of light, they conversed about their respective magics. Richard discussed softening the earth and stone to trap his opponents, while Jura discussed hardening the earth and stone to use in attacks. Usually, Richard would then conjure an earth tsunami to deliver the final blow. People would have assumed that those two were down-to-earth types if they had been spotted conversing in such a city, pun intended. In the meantime, Gray after Racer attempted to blow them all to Kingdom Come. Gray and Sherry watched Leon and Racer fall to a pile of wood logs at the foot of a cliff. He was unaware that Sherry was muttering things like, "It is his fault," and staring at him with lifeless eyes while a number of root-like structures rose up from the ground behind her. Shortly before she sent them at him, yelling bloody murder, Gray became aware of them. This made him defensive, wondering why he had such bad luck with redheads and recalling the times he was beaten to death by Erza and Naru, and now this. Even though Sherry went completely crazy, Gray knew that everything was a misunderstanding and took it easy on her, freezing only the ground in her magic creations, until she started making ice constructs out of his own ice, which made him complain about troublesome women. In roughly 40,000 other universes in addition to the present one, the entire Nara clan vowed to exact revenge on anyone who stole their second catchphrase. Troublesome was stolen by an unknown individual, and troublesome women was stolen by an unknown individual as well. And back in an attempt to persuade Sherry to see reason, Gray eventually succeeded in getting behind her and snagging her in an improvised headlock. From the tree line, a new but recognizable voice said, "What the heck is going on here?" "Leon?" exclaimed Gray. "Where the hell have you been?" "Leon-sama," Sherry exclaimed after Gray let her go. "The explosion was more powerful than I had anticipated, but it took me some time to gather the strength to walk again. Right, after I threw this guy here," Leon started, pulling Racer out from behind the tree. Unconscious, and myself over the cliff, I managed to remove his suicide vest and throw it away in time. "I see," Sherry uttered as she passed out, her body evaporating black miasma. "About time too. Your girlfriend here had gone ape-shit crazy after we thought you had died," Gray stated to him. Leon grimaced. "She isn't my girlfriend, more like a friend with very bad side effects," said Gray. Gray smirked and said, "Oh, what am I missing out on here?" Alongside Naru kept observing Erza and Jalal's interactions as the latter described to Erza how terrifying Nirvana truly is and that he had already started the magic circle that would destroy it. Suddenly, a huge, intricate magic seal materialized behind him, covering a sizable area of the black and white pillar. Cobra made his presence known by yelling, "No," and doing everything in his power to turn off the magic circle. When Jelal used a smaller, comparable magic circle on himself and said the deactivation key would vanish along with him, the situation became more heated. However, this proved pointless when Brain showed up and claimed to have created this particular self-destruct magic seal, so he was aware of the universal deactivation key he had incorporated into it. He launched Erza and Jelal into the air with a burst of magic, and then the earth beneath them all abruptly parted. In the meantime, Brain was giggling uncontrollably, and Cobra was also giggling with triumph. Brain yelled, "You maggots are too late. We have won. Now, awaken, Nirvana." And the wood sea trembled as if something enormous were shifting. A huge stone structure that was hundreds of times bigger than the fairy tale guild hall, no, it was more like a whole city, rose from the floor. It was lifted up by 6 enormous tubular legs, which supported the entire thing. Alongside Natsu, Gray ran toward the pillar of light in the hopes of running into someone, and Natsu, Lucy, Happy, and Wendy met him. Since Racer needed to be watched, Sherry was still unconscious, and Leon was still tired, he had made the decision to stay behind. With Jelal and Erza had one hand gripping the edge of the stone structure and the other gripping Jelal, who was hanging freely. She heard Jelal say, "So white," out of the blue. "Huh?" she asked, not understanding his meaning. Jelal turned away in embarrassment. "White and frilly," she said. Is that your preference?" Erza gave him a long look before noticing that he could see right up her skirt, which caused her to light up like a certain pale-eyed brunette from Konoha used to. With a very girly, un-Erza-like, kya, relatively speaking, she threw Jelal over the edge and onto safe ground. A tall building collapsed on top of him after he collided with it. Erza didn't notice because she was too busy climbing and keeping her skirt tucked in close to her legs. Alongside Richard and Jura when Nirvana appeared beneath them, the 2 high-level Earth wizards were enjoying a joyride. Richard had used his fluid Earth magic to create a wave, and Jura had used his solid Earth magic to create 2 makeshift surfboards. They touched down close to the intersection of the leg that Natsu and the others were ascending. With Brain and Racer, the 2 dark mages, who had been at the center of the chaos, were now standing at the top of the tower where Nirvana is controlled. Racer was on guard, looking around, while Brain was using the ancient control magic seals. Alongside Naru, as Naru strolled around the ruin on the other side of Nirvana from where Erza was, she exclaimed, "Wow, now this is impressive." Naru crossed her fingers and said, "Anyway, time to find the others," she uttered, "Shadow clone jutsu," and conjured up dozens of clones, sending them in all directions. They vanished into the darkness quickly and silently. Before making her way to the highest point in the region, she remarked, "Now then, time to give someone some payback." To the surprise of both residents, she arrived just as Brain was putting the city on autopilot. Cobra hurried to meet her. "Got," he heard abruptly and had to halt. He looked around and asked, "What was that?" Brain gave him a worried look. "I said," Cobra heard the voice again and recognized Naru's smirking voice. "Hey there, maggot." All of a sudden, Cobra was standing face to face with the biggest fox he had ever seen in a large, dark room. It had enormous ears that were folded back, and its fur was a golden red color. Behind him, there were no tails swishing about. The fox, who appeared to be less than a foot ahead of Cobra, suddenly let out a roar. "Ah!" Cobra cried out, clutching his ears. When he finally recovered, Natsu joined the celebration, but not before destroying the tower and dividing everyone once more. Both the battle between Natsu and Cobra and the one between Midnight and Erza are canon. Cobra is eliminated by Brain in the same manner. Alongside Naru, when Naru noticed that Brain was going to take her friends out, she intervened to save them. She called forth a large shield that she strengthened with chakra by channeling it into a seal on her forearm. She used it to block Brain's dark capriccio scream, which pushed her back a few inches until she used chakra to lock herself down. One of her friends exclaimed, "Naru?" with relief. "Sorry for being late, got lost in this city," Naru replied. Brain said, "How are you here, 1,000 clones?" "You know, I'd prefer Demon Queen at the moment," Naru smiled, his canines pointed out. Her whisker lines were more noticeable, and her eyes were closed. After finishing, Naru opened her eyes and showed blood-red irises with black, vertical slit pupils. "Because right now, I am synced with my inner demon." Even everyone retreated from the young wizard saint. Minus Brain, who was still standing as killing intent swept through the area. He simply questioned, "What is this power?" while appearing unaffected by the level of killing intent on the inside. Naru responded, "This is me right now going at approximately a third of my full power." Then she abruptly vanished from view. Naru kicked Brain into the air, and the next thing Brain felt was a foot hitting the underside of his chin. Quick! That was everyone's collective thought. Naru smirked evilly and said, "So, Brain. Let me introduce you to a new world, one filled with pain and your defeat." An orb materialized in her hand. Brain growled and rose from his spot, saying, "I don't think so." He uttered the words, "Dark Coricchio," and launched an attack at Naru, who dashed toward the beam with her blade ready. To her friend's surprise, Naru charged the beam while holding a swirling blue orb. Naru slammed the orb into the approaching magic just before the beam struck her, breaking it completely as she sped ahead. She yelled, "Rasengan," as her Rasengan kept grinding through. Brain cancelled his magic attack after realizing he was being beaten, only to have Naru reappear in front of him and slam the orb into his stomach, sending him hurtling through multiple buildings. He spit out a mouthful of blood and said, "How? My attack should have pierced yours with ease. You should really use what you were named after, old man." Naru laughed. She held up both hands this time and formed two Rasengans. Piercing attacks are useful against targets that don't move much. My attack just now is in constant spherical motion in all directions. You do the maths. Oh, and I was going easy on you there. What? Exclaimed Brain and the others, but the spectators were yelling because Naru had just thrown Brain into the air and said it was going easy. Naru grinned and chirped, "Yep." This, along with her more untamed look and ghastly eyes, made everyone shudder. "Because, I seem to recall introducing you to a new world." Brain began to perspire, and for the first time in his life, he thought about willingly taking off his seal's failsafe to beat this bitch in front of him. As he climbed out of the wreckage, Naru began to approach him. He was just about to remove the seal when he was launched into the air and sent flying straight down, destroying another building, after being viciously axe-kicked by one of Naru's clones. As Naru unleashed wave after wave of Rasengan with clones at the poor mage, loud explosions ensued, destroying an increasing amount of the city. Alongside Natsu and company fearfully, Lucy said, the Nervit are extinct, right?" "I think they are. I have never heard of any living ones alive, that is for sure," Jura replied. With a sigh of relief, Lucy said, "Oh, thank God." On the other hand, Natsu yelled, "Go Naru! Kick that man's ass!" "I," said Happy. "I heard stories that the mages of Fairy Tail receive only half of the pay because the other half goes to repair the collateral damage," Jura said with a slight shiver. He didn't want to know what would have happened if Naru had fought him while she was in her current state, so he said, "Seeing this level of destruction makes me want to believe you are being let off easy." Happy exclaimed, "It's a Fairy Tail specialty," without giving his words any thought. Charla flew away with Wendy to find someone more sane because she could no longer stand the chance of her being corrupted by this group of crazy people. Returning to the battle, Brain roared, "Enough!" and sent out a magical pulse that caused the clones to explode in smoke. He yelled in agony, "This fight will soon end argh." Suddenly, Naru noticed that a single line remained on his face after one of the markings vanished. Naru prepared herself for any magic the man might use on her, but when he began to laugh, she became perplexed. With runes beginning to emerge all around him, he declared, "It is over now. Once I remove the seal, you will all be destroyed." When Naru mentioned that he was wearing a seal and that he did not like it at all, his eyes widened. She attacked because she didn't want to take the chance. Alongside the others as they were heading to their friends, Erza, Jelal, Wendy, and Charla, the latter two having joined them after Erza had just vanquished Midnight, fell to their knees due to the tremendous surge in pressure and magical power. Additionally, they were spared from a human-type missile that was launched inches above Jalal's head and crashed through the buildings because they were kneeling. A huge explosion erupted in front of them a short while later. The pressure abruptly stopped as quickly as it had begun. "What was that?" inquired Jelal. According to Erza, "No idea." "This smell," muttered Wendy. Charla and Erza asked, "What is it?" Erza began running in the same direction the missile had come from earlier, but Wendy stopped short when a wave of keys swept through the area. "This smells like Naru." Wendy didn't finish. Even Jelal was on his knees, and the sense of dread that filled the air paralyzed Wendy and Charla. Even Erza was trembling, but she was able to remain upright because she had experienced this fear before. "So, that guy wants a fight," exclaimed a deep, rumbling voice. "Run for your life, you little piece of shit." "What? Oh, all right. Yes, I won't go beyond 4, what was that?" The loud voice suddenly became calm and normal volume, leaving everyone listening perplexed. A red-black creature with glowing white eyes and mouth appeared out of the dust. There were 4 tails swinging about. She said, who are you? To Wendy. After giving Wendy a quick glance, Kurama relinquished control to Naru. Oh, forgive me, Wendy-chan, but I will explain later, Naru replied. For now I need to. Before Naru could finish speaking, she was struck by another powerful blast of dark magic, which sent her hurtling through several more houses. From his position beside the prone and motionless bodies of Natsu, Happy, Lucy, Gray, Jura, Cobra, and Hot Eye, Zero could be heard laughing. A red, black-clawed hand grabbed him by the face, interrupting his laughter. Naru then used Zero as a projectile to destroy a few more buildings in return. She then unleashed a few dozen powerful fire and wind ninjutsu, engulfing Zero in a flaming conflagration as he laughed once more. Naru, better finish this fight quickly, using the second stage cloak will still hurt you in the long run. Kurama cautioned Naru. At most, I'd say you have 2 minutes tops before you start dying. And those fools on the council will be on my case, so I don't want to reveal our trump card, Naru replied. Kurama's warning was a little too late, as Naru had barely had time to look up and receive a faceful of dark magic from Zero. True. Oh, and by the way, you have incoming. Naru roared, starting to gather blue and red chakra ions in front of her mouth. You are getting annoying. Zero grinned and made the decision to test the limits of this new attack. What is this? A final pathetic attempt? Naru. Don't. Erza yelled abruptly. She was aware of this attack since she had sensed Naru's chakra building up. Naru uttered, Bijudama, and directed the compressed chakra orb in the direction of Zero. On the opposite side of the valley, in Kate Shelter Guild, the explosion was audible. Erza and her group got there just in time to witness Naru start to transform back into a human, screaming as the red, black chakra cloak retreated into the seal, revealing burned flesh in the process. There was a huge hole in the floor where Zero had been standing before. There was no sign of the man. Erza yelled, Naru, as she ran in the direction of Naru, who had fully transformed back into a human, albeit one without skin. Naru pushed out, sorry, Erza. I had no choice but to go this far. Wendy started doing her best to heal Naru right away. Naru let her consciousness slip away and sighed as the pain subsided. Jelal said, anyone mind telling me what is going on? Erza responded bluntly, that was Naru being an idiot. Time skipping with a sigh, Naru put on the clothing that the Kate Shelter Guild had provided. Naru rarely gave herself a little, girly girl time, but this was one of the few occasions she did. There was a big pile of clothing behind her that she had already tried on, ranging from loose-fitting dresses to tight-fitting garments that would have pleased her godfather in the elemental nations. That morning, she had woken up feeling refreshed. Shortly after, Erza, who had been sleeping in the bed to her left, woke up and hugged her best friend, assuming she was okay. Then, to Naru's surprise, Erza started to explain what had happened after she fainted 2 days ago. Zero apparently made his way to one of the 6 lacrima that power the entire building after surviving the Bijudama. By using their remaining magic bombs, the members of the Lamia Scale and Blue Pegasus guilds were able to restore the Christina to a functional state, causing enough damage to one of her legs to prevent Nirvana's initial attack from reaching the Cage Shelter Guild Hall. Erza and Jelal, along with a now awake Natsu, Gray, Lucy, and Ichiya who had somehow found themselves near one of the lacrima, decided to attempt to destroy all 6 lacrima simultaneously in order to stop Nirvana from firing again. Whether by design or chance, Natsu found himself up against Zero, and after a near-fatal blow from Zero, Jelal showed up in the middle of the fight and gave Natsu all of his magical power. Zero, whose injuries from his battle with Naru finally started to affect him, was totally subdued by Natsu after he entered a state known as Dragon Force. In the end, all 6 lacrima were destroyed. Erza equipped her black wing armor. Lucy received unexpected assistance from Gemini and summoned Taurus to smash his way through the lacrima. Pun not intended. Ichai used some kind of perfume that made him into a big macho man and punched the hard lacrima, and Natsu literally head-butted Zero through his. Wendy had replaced Jelal and crushed her lacrima with her Sky Dragon's roar. Naru let out a sigh. After the members of Oracion Cease were taken into custody by the Reformed Magic Council, Hot Eye. No, Richard was released, and Jelal did the same. Evidently, Lahar was in charge of this group and attempted to have Naru arrested after observing her condition and accusing her of threatening the council during one of their previous meetings. The Rune Knight's barrier could have been destroyed by the sheer volume of magic that the Fairy Tail members and Ki Erza were hurling at the Magic Knights. And after Jura expressed his own disapproval, Lahar came to the conclusion, which the other rune knights also held, that perhaps he should drop the charges because doing so might not be good for him. When Naru heard a knock, she turned to face the door. Erza called, "Naru, are you finished?" Naru called back, saying, "I have a problem here, I don't know what to wear." Naru heard Lucy walk into the room and said, "Oh, that won't be a problem." After 15 minutes, the female mages essentially had a fashion show, with Naru serving as the model and Lucy selecting the clothes. Naru was red in the face. The audience, minus Wendy, had a slight case of nosebleeding from some of the Clumbo's loosest outfits. Lucy finally decided to give Naru a form-fitting red and orange skirt and top. Regretfully, despite being the largest size, Naru felt as though she was wearing a skimpy lingerie set because the top was a few sizes too small for her body type. As a silent form of retaliation for almost making her urinate in her pants several times back in Fairy Tail, Lucy was grinning in her head. Kurama sensed Lucy's intentions inside the seal and grinned, choosing not to inform Naru. After a few days, Erza questioned Naru as she prepared to board a ship bound for the Elemental Nations. "Are you sure you don't want me to come with you?" She now knew how to return to the Elemental Nations and back thanks to the chakra compass that Kakashi had given her and the ship's crew, which included a few dozen of Naru's clones. Positive. Erza, I may like you, but someone has to keep the peace in the guild, I mean, with Laxus gone. Mistogen mostly absent, Mira not really doing much, myself sailing back to Konoha for a few weeks, someone will need to keep the morons from destroying the entire city. Naru stated to her new girlfriend. Besides, Wendy has taken quite a liking to you, hasn't she? Erza gave a nod. Master Rubal had told the truth about his guild, and himself, when the Light Guild Alliance had departed Cage Shelter a few days prior. He was an itinerant soul who waited for his creation, Nirvana, to be destroyed before continuing on to the next life. Now that he had achieved that objective, he could unleash his magic, revealing that Wendy was the only human still alive in the guild, while he was a ghost and the others were thought projections. Rubal asked the members of the Light Guild Alliance to look after Wendy while she sobbed uncontrollably into Erza's shoulder. When Naru noticed that Erza was a little pale at the prospect of a second Kana wandering the guild, she grinned and asked, "Or do you want Natsu to rub off on her? Or worse yet, Kana?" Erza said, "Oh, okay, just promise me something." Naru said, What is it?" Erza drew her close to kiss him. "Try not to get into trouble like you usually do." Before getting on the ship and sailing away, Naru gave Erza a final kiss on the lips and replied, "Hi, Chan." Erza turned to face a smirking Mira and Kana after watching the ship until it disappeared over the horizon. Mira, who was clearly making fun of Erza while maintaining a straight face and a smile, said, "Ah, an official couple for less than 2 days and already she is on a month-long journey." Kana, on the other hand, was only interested in the juicy details. Screw that, how good of a kisser is she? By now, Erza's hair and face were the same color. Please hurry back, Naru-chan, Erza thought. After 1 week, Nami no Kuni. An unknown ship appeared out of the sun as an elderly inebriated bridge builder and his teenage grandson sat on the pier fishing and taking in the sunset. "The Elemental Nations shore," the boy said. "What kind of ship is that, Gigi?" "No idea, Inari, I have never seen anything like it, nor have I ever seen the symbol on its sails," said the elderly gentleman. "Better get to town and warn everyone in case this is a threat to us," he said, turning to face Inari after a while. Inari said, "Will do, Gigi," and then ran to the town center to sound the alarm. The old man, meanwhile, kept watching the ship come closer and believed he saw something in the crow's nest reflect the sun. He saw multiple figures drop an anchor and reel in the sails when the ship was about 300 feet from the pier. Abruptly, a huge cloud of smoke burst from the ship's deck. As he looked back, the old man noticed a number of town militia members running toward him. The leader said, "Tazuna Dono, what is going on?" Tazuna simply gestured toward the ship in the harbor that was covered in clouds. Shortly after, a lone figure leapt over the side and began running across the water, directly toward them. As the figure drew closer, they noticed that it was a stunning woman with knee-length crimson hair who appeared to be around 17, possibly 18 or even 19. Tazuna swore he recognized her from somewhere. She was dressed in black form-fitting shorts and a white kimono shirt tied with a blue obi. She was wearing sandals with black heels. She slowed as she got closer. The people watching now noticed that she had a tanto fastened to her left hip via the obi, and a katana strapped over her shoulder. She wore a number of bracelets with metal etched with some kind of design. She caught everyone's attention with her deep violet eyes. Finally, she resembled a fox because she had 6 whiskers, 3 on each cheek. Tazuna uttered the words, "Well, I'll be damned," before bursting into laughter. One of the guards said, "Tazuna, you know who this is?" Tazuna laughed and said, "Oh, yes, and so should you lot, it's Naru Onisan." As Naru arrived at firm ground, Inari yelled, but she was struck by Inari, who then threw her a jumping embrace. "Naru? Like the Naru? Naru Uzumaki? The Nami hero? The woman after whom you named your great bridge?" A number of the militiamen started to inquire. "It has been a while, hasn't it, Gaki?" Tazuna said, before going up to the redhead, one and the same. Before embracing the elderly man, Naru replied, "Only 7 long years, ya old drunk. It is good to see you guys again." "If you are here, I am guessing that you have come to return to Konoha," Tazuna responded. Naru grinned and said, "Yep, but not to stay. Not to remain?" Did Inari ask? "I won't return to being a kunoichi of Konoha," Naru clarified. "I have a new life and a new family, new friends back in Fury, the land I am living in now." "From what I heard, Konoha's council will not be happy about that," Tazuna murmured. "Yeah, well, the ones that aren't happy can kiss my ass," Naru replied with a smile. "I mean, they were the ones who made me leave in the first place." Looking at her possessions, a rather brazen militiaman remarked, "A pity you didn't stay with us. First, Konoha and the other shinobi villages would have targeted Nami because of who I am and what I carry," Naru said, holding up one finger before adding another, "and secondly, if I stayed here, I'd have to suffer people like you staring at my tits all the time." Numerous men expressed their agreement, with one saying, "But that just means that they are worth looking at." After grinning, Naru instructed Tazuna and Inari to keep their eyes shut at all costs. "How about I put on a show for you guys?" She used her sexy jutsu on the militiamen after asking them. Let's just say that the men were sent flying via Nosebleed Express after their minds shut down after less than 2 seconds. With a laugh, Naru accompanied Tatsuna and Inari to their house, where she stayed overnight and spoke with the 3-member family. Tsunami went above and beyond in her cooking to have Naru in the house once more. Time jump. Morning 3 days later in the village hidden in the leaves, everything was as usual. Shops and businesses were opening and getting ready for the day, shinobi were training or hanging out together, and one blonde Hokage was walking into her office and confronting her most dreaded foe, paperwork. The lone woman was approaching the main gate, but neither of the 2 gate guards saw her until a massive cloud of smoke burst from her position. Alongside Tsunade after completing her morning paperwork, Tsunade's senses were overwhelmed by a tremendous amount of ki and chakra. Using the Konoha 11 Tenten was dragged into the air by Neji as he leapt violently out of bed, and because they had been so active the night before, they were as naked as the day they were born. Sakura and Sasuke had a frontline view of what was happening because they were just finishing their shift on the walls. Tsunade had given them the same shifts as a thank you for a prank he pulled on the civilian council a few years ago. Shino turned around and made his way to the gate without a word. When the ki and chakra struck Kiba and Akamaru as they were leaving the Inuzuka compound, they chose to turn around and return to their beds. In record time, Hinata jumped out of bed, put on her mask and Anbu armor, and hurried to the Hokage office to protect Tsunade. Lee didn't notice since he was too preoccupied with his training. It was too difficult for Shikamaru to get out of bed for this. Through it, Choji slept. Ino was unaware of what was happening because she was on a mission outside the village. In other places the ki hit Kakashi and Might Guy midway through a race, which had become a youthful race to the front gate, as Guy described it, and they were competing once more. At the front gate again the smoke was starting to clear by the time everyone arrived at the gate to learn what was happening, exposing. "I'm back, shitheads." The Kyuubi who loomed over the village's walls and whose voice could be heard for miles through the forests. Since they had never received this level of ki before, the majority of the younger shinobi, if not all of them, instantly passed out. "Kid, do you think I can have some fun with these guys?" The Kyuubi questioned a figure perched atop his head. The only response he required was, "Don't kill anyone." He started to approach the gates, drool streaming from his mouth, his enormous teeth exposed as if he were going to nibble on something, or someone. The Kyuubi said aloud, "It's been a long time since I had a snack." The shinobi who hadn't passed out made the decision to leave immediately to avoid becoming giant fox food. After a few minutes when Tsunade reached the gate, the Kyuubi was patiently waiting while perched on his haunches. Before he started smoking, he told her, "You took longer than expected to arrive." A new female voice said, "Ah, that felt good." Tsunade's heart leapt with delight as she recognized the voice. "Is that you, Naru?" she inquired. Naru hurried past her, saying, "Yup, and if you excuse me, I have some place to be." Though she took everything with her when she left all those years ago, the dingy apartment had been her home for 8 years. Tsunade and the Konoha 11 later found her at her old apartment, or what was left of it, as it turned out that some civilians had burned the entire building down a few years ago in remembrance of Naru's exile. Tsunade embraced Naru tightly. As if she hadn't intended to beat Naru to within an inch of her life, she said, "Despite it all, I am glad you are back." Not feeling sorry for Naru's beating, Sakura was occupied with healing as much of him as she could. With an outward smirk, Sasuke said, "You are back for 0 seconds and already pulling shit out of your ass, Dobet. You are seriously one of a kind." He was frowning because she had just outdone him as the person who could pull the biggest practical joke on the entire village at once. After that, Tsunade pulled Naru to her office, followed by the other Konoha 11 members. A Konoha Anbu, who was hiding in the crowd and had a blank mask with a single kanji under his left eye, noticed the newcomer and went to inform his superior. Afterwards, the Hokage office, "Now, speak up, brat. Where were you in the name of the Six Paths Sage?" Tsunade inquired. "Oh, you mean Otsutsuki Hagoromo?" Naru inquired. "Who?" The other individuals in the room inquired. "You wouldn't know, I see. Before you ask, the enormous fluffy ball of fur is an ancient source of knowledge," Naru informed them, adding that was the Sage of the Six Paths' true name. The others gazed at her as she said, "Can you converse with it?" Shikamaru inquired. When the others stared at her in confusion, Naru clarified, Kyuubi is a male, not a, it, him. One of his biggest triggers is being called that." The door opened before anyone could say anything, and a number of people, all shinobi elders or members of the civilian council, rushed in. "We've heard that Uzumaki Naru has made a comeback, Hokage-sama." One of them started, "We demand that she return to active duty immediately." Naru instantly told them, "Forget it." The civilian continued, utterly disregarding her, under the command of Shimura Danzo. There was silence in the room as Naru and the Konoha 11 slowly turned to glare at the elders and civilians. "How about using a rusty serrated kunai to fuck yourselves in the ass? And then when you take it out, eat whatever comes with it? First of all, I didn't come here to become a leaf shinobi again," Naru inquired. "Second, who are you to hold Tsunade Obaa-chan to demands? Thirdly, you guys were the ones who banished me in the first place. Fourth, why the devil do you care about me now when, as far as I can tell, Tsunade Obaa-chan revoked the banishment against your will? Finally, why would I submit to the authority of a useless belligerent such as Danzo?" Every non-shinobi in the room gazed at Naru, but the active shinobi treated her with respect because she was free to express herself. A sentiment that almost all of the shinobi in the village shared, and didn't care about the repercussions. When Naru's tanto was forced down his throat, the civilian gurgled, "You are nothing more than a mere peasant right now, so we have some authority over you, demon. I tolerated the shit you fucks threw at me because it was my dream to be Hokage once." Naru snarled ominously. "The day you had me exiled was the day you lost any and all authority over me." Naru pulled back her tanto and turned to face the civilians. "Now, I am a citizen of another country not affiliated in any way to the elemental nations, with a new family, a new home, and someone to love." Her gaze turned into a glare as her features grew more feral, her eyes turning blood red with slits. "And if any of you even so much as dare to try and fuck with me again," Naru's face took on a particular evil smirk. The members of the civilian council were now soaking wet. Sweating a little, Homura said, "True, but we can have you imprisoned for murder." "Oh, that. Drop the damn genjutsu, will ya, Sasuke?" Naru said, adding in a whisper, "Wish it had been real though." Sasuke said, "Spoil sport," but complied with her request. As they glanced at one another, the civilians realized that Naru had not killed anyone and that she most likely could have killed them all before any of them could have blinking. "So, has anyone seen Ero Sennin already? Or is he once again on his research trips?" The word, research, was emphasized as Naru asked. "Last I saw of him he was heading to the hot springs," Sasuke replied. Sakura and Tsunade thought they needed another punching bag. A little while later, Konoha Hot Springs, when Jiraiya of the Sannin heard words that made his bones tingle, he was engaging in his favorite pastime, which is peeping. Konoha Hiden Nin Taijutsu Ugi. The next thing he knew, something covered in what felt like glowing hot coals was entering his ass. Kaiten. Sennin Garashi. He was launched far above the hot springs, at least the female side, and landed squarely in the center of the male side, which the new Kama Society just so happened to be using. I don't know whether to pity him for the flaming version of the usual Senin Garashi or feel happy that he is getting his punishment at long last, Hinata murmured. What are you saying? Naru inquired. Hinata started. Well, how do I put it, already uneasy. As direct as ever, Shino stated. Jiraiya once peeped on her while she was bathing. With that ignorance, how did you enter Anbu? With a playful smile, Naru inquired. Before Hinata could respond, Jiraiya fled the hot springs with his hands on his still smoking ass while a dozen or so members of the new Kama society followed him. In other words, Jiraiya was now running for his life. While Hinata and the other girls silently thanked Naru for bringing justice to the pervert, Naru was rolling around on the floor laughing. When Jiraiya eventually managed to escape the assailants, he set out to find the person who had literally burned the living daylights out of him. He didn't have to look far to spot a strangely familiar mop of red hair, but he didn't recognize her. All he saw was a sexy babe, and he instantly went into super pervert mode. While the girls were trying to hide evil grins and smirks because they knew what would happen, Kiba and Sasuke took a step back when they saw Jiraiya begin flirting with Naru because they knew how Naru would react. Because of how Naru reacted when Kiba tried to flirt with her back in Magnolia. When Jiraiya said, "Why, hello there, pretty young lady. Will you let me buy you a snack?" The Konoha 11's eyes widened at his words, and then they all started to hold back their laughter. Naru said, "If your pocket is deep enough, then sure." On the inside, she and Kurama were either laughing or conspiring to drain his bank account, possibly both. "Where would you like to go?" Jiraiya said with a charming smile. "Awesome. How about this tiny spot I discovered in Konoha the last time I was here? You might be familiar with it. Ichiraku's ramen," Naru suggested. Jiraiya ignored the warning signs that were ringing in his head for some reason. "Really?" Jiraiya remarked. "Well, lady, you know the best ramen place in all the elemental nations?" Jiraiya didn't notice, but when Naru moved her arm, the others noticed and couldn't help but snicker. "So I have heard as well," Naru said sweetly before snatching his arm and covertly applying a seal to it. "Lead the way, Mr. Gentleman." Tsunade arrived as Jiraiya was leading Naru away to Ichiraku's, and she froze upon witnessing Jiraiya escorting her grandchild in all but name. Herzing, "Why that little?" She stopped when Sasuke and Hinata raised their arms in front of her. Sasuke said, "Don't worry about her." Hinata clarified, "Jiraiya-sama offered to buy her something to eat." "Where are they heading?" Tsunade inquired. Together, Naru's friends uttered the word, ramen. After staring at them for a few moments, Tsunade's face broke into a shit-eating smile. "Oh, that will be punishment enough for that pervert," Tsunade replied. Jiraiya heard the warning signs blaring loudly back with the departing couple, but she wasn't sure why. He had previously dated high-end women, but this attractive woman next to him couldn't possibly be that expensive, could she? Not long after, in the 30 minutes since they got to Ichiraku's ramen stand, Jiraiya had not only started to regret his previous choice regarding the attractive redhead, but he had also started to worry about the condition of his bank account following this brief encounter. Naturally, Tucci and Ayame had recognized Naru right away because they had been informed by a shadow clone from Sasuke just before Naru and Jiraiya arrived, so they were aware of what Naru was planning to do. Today their family would be extremely wealthy. Jiraiya decided to get the hell out of there, but he was unable to do so because there appeared to be a barrier around the small diner, and he watched in horror as the stack of empty bowls topped 30, and the woman showed no signs of stopping anytime soon. Additionally, he discovered that while inside the barrier, neither the Kawarimi nor the Shunshin functioned. He heard the young woman add, in a sweet voice and with a very fox-like puppy eyes jutsu, leaving as no use, "Ero Senin. Not until you pay for my food as you promised." "Do I know you?" Jiraiya asked, feeling extremely frightened at the moment. When she called him that for the second time, Jiraiya's eyes widened. Only one person in the world had called him that. "It has been a few years, Ero Senin," she said. "Enna Naru. Oh gods, I just hit on my goddaughter," he stammered, gesturing to her with a trembling finger. Before finishing her bowl of ramen and grabbing another bowl that Tucci was holding out to her, Naru remarked, "Took you long enough. So, how has business been, old man?" Naruto inquired. He replied, "Slow without my favorite customer." Ayame's greeting was more direct, and she walked around, bruising Naru's ribs with an embrace. "How many more bowls will you be having, say Naru?" With a gleeful rubbing of his hands, Tucci asked, and Ayame appeared beside him, smiling at Jiraiya with a sickly sweet expression. Before slurping the ramen from the bowl in front of her, Naru remarked, About 5 more. Knowing that he had made a grave mistake by asking her out, Jiraiya went pale. He heard Tsunade and a few shinobi on the other side of the barrier laughing uncontrollably, and among them was a gorgeous brunette Anbu he had seen peeking on earlier. The memory made his nose bleed. Alone in the hot spring and loudly imagining sex with another girl, she had been so naughty. He strained his neck, turning it quickly to look at her after Naru's remark, "Make that 10 more bowls, that is for looking perversely at one of my friends." Jiraiya went pale when he saw the bill Tucci had given him. It was almost 5 digits long. Jiraiya was having a terrible day. In addition to tricking him into paying for one of Naru's binges of ramen, she also managed to put a seal on him without his knowledge, which caused his bank account to plummet significantly. Tucci immediately shut down his business after making the payment and went out to purchase supplies to enlarge the structure and more energy-efficient boilers and stoves for the kitchen. But as Naru patted her barely swollen stomach, or, as all the shinobi watching now referred to it, the bottomless ramen chasm, she was blissfully unaware of all of this. "Oh, cheer up, Ero Sennin," Naru stated to her godfather. "You will earn that money back in a month from the brothels you own alone." "How are you aware of that?" Jiraiya cried. "You ate your way through a vast amount of money there." Despite his best efforts, he was unable to express his anger toward this brat, despite her maturity. Naru held up a stack of writing-filled papers and said, "Because I think that you are going to provide an update to that series of yours. I mean, these manuscripts are pretty much filled up." "Whaa. When? How?" Jiraiya cried out as he searched his pockets for his priceless manuscripts. "Want a sneak peek before the release, Kakashi?" Naru called out. She barely finished before a white-haired cyclopean scarecrow appeared before her, Sharingan revealed. "I'll take that as a yes." Jiraiya grabbed the pages out of her hands and sealed them with a blood seal before either of them could react. He glared at the two of them and said, "These are not for reading yet." Tsunade was laughing off to the side about how Naru was playing Jiraiya. To be honest, she hadn't even realized she had picked Jiraiya's pocket. Naru stretched her limbs and remarked, "Well, now that I've had enough of ramen, would anyone like to spar?" Immediately, many hands went up. A little while later, Training Ground 7. Naru remarked, "Ah, this place brings back some memories." She was entering the first training area she had ever been on with Team 7. "Yes, it does, don't you think?" "What? Sakura being duped with a genjutsu about me dying, myself being pulled into the ground, and you falling for every single trap Kakashi-sensei set up, while also being conceited enough to attempt to confront him directly?" Sasuke questioned. Sakura laughed and said, "Only to get some amazing airtime from that Sennin Garashi. If I recall correctly, you were the weakest link in our team until just before I had to go and kick this guy's ass at the Valley of the End." Naru pointed a thumb at Sasuke and said, "I wouldn't giggle if I were you, Sakura." Sasuke retorted, "And I seem to remember you not being much better at the start." "Oh yeah, the only dead last to grow enough in half a year to be able to defeat the prodigy of her own grade, not to mention the prodigy of the previous year," Naruto responded. Before Naru said, "Anyway, what classification are you at the moment?" the two started joking about who was superior. "High A rank." "Why?" Sasuke inquired. "Well, the ranking method may be different in Ishgar, but over in my new home I am classified as a high S rank." Naru was beaming. "Also, since your visit I have been awarded a position as one of the 10 strongest people on the continent." Everyone else gazed at her. "I am going to go out on a limb here and call you on your bullshit," Kiba responded. "Would you like to offer to go first?" Kiba nodded when Naru asked. The fight started with Kakashi as the referee, and Kiba and Akamaru charged in right away, only to freeze when Naru leveled her ki at him. "She resembles Mom." Fearful, Akamaru snarled, "I didn't sign up to fight this alpha." Pale as paper and urinating in his pants, Kiba nodded. "What smell is that?" "Hey Kiba, did you urinate on your pants?" Naru inquired abruptly. Kiba passed out from the strain and embarrassment. "Well, that was a letdown," Naru replied. "I can understand why he isn't Jonin yet." The training ground was suddenly filled with the sound of a very familiar and loud voice. "Having a fight without me invoking me is UNYOUTHFUL. Rock Lee yelled as he sped straight toward Naru, punching out with his arm. Immediately placed on the defensive against Lee's savage assault, Naru exclaimed, "Oh shit. You were who knows where, Lee. How were we supposed to know where you were?" Before being knocked to the ground by a very strong blow to the face, Naru asked. Lee abruptly halted his attack and said, "Oh, that is a good point. Naru kept flying through a number of trees. Hinata yelled, "Naru-chan," as she rushed to her crush. Naru remarked, "I-tate, your punch is still like a kicking mule." Obviously, if it weren't, it wouldn't be youthful, Lee stated. Naru made the tiger sign and said, "Well, that's all right, but you ought to have made sure I was knocked out." Kai. Suddenly, a number of explosive tags that were fastened to Lee's bodysuit materialized and began to sizzle. What? Before multiple explosions went off point-blank range, leaving Lee black and smoldering and essentially unconscious, that was all Lee could say. As Hinata assisted her in leaving the destroyed trees, Naru assured her friends, "Don't worry. I used low-level concussion explosive tags on him. So, who's next?" Only Sasuke, Sakura, and Kakashi himself did not retreat from the remaining group. "All right, Kakashi-san, how would you like to proceed? Single bell test?" inquired Naru. "Of course, why not?" Pulling a single bell from his pocket, Kakashi said. She was warned by Kakashi, however, "I'll only give you 3 hours." Naru remarked, "That'll be plenty of time. Get started." Before either was apparently ready, Sasuke yelled. Kakashi barely had time to replace himself with a nearby log before a hand grabbed for the bell on his belt as he felt something grab his ankles and drag him to the ground. Shit, he thought, not anticipating that Naru had already used her clones to booby-trap the entire field. According to Naru, Cage Shuriken Bunshin no Jutsu. As soon as he touched down, Naru launched a wave of shuriken at him, forcing him to dodge once more. Kakashi started to ask, when did she? But then a Naru materialized above him and landed directly on him. Seeing the chakra gathered in her hand, Kakashi realized something. When and where the hell did she learn to use Godime's monstrous strength? Kakashi cried in his head, beginning to regret some of his life's decisions, including fighting against this little monstrosity of a former pupil. Oh, fuck my life, he dodged, but was flung into the air by the shockwave that came from her fist breaking the ground. Sakura and Sasuke were watching with wide eyes, but everyone was already doing that. They didn't think anyone else would go and learn that technique, and they didn't think Naru would be able to keep Kakashi on his toes like this. After all, he was regarded as a shinobi of the cage level. I vote that Naru-ne-chan wasn't joking when she said that she was one of the 10 strongest people in her country, Konohamaru replied. Without hesitation or delay, Moegi and Udon said, "Second that." The other shinobi spoke their agreements one by one. Additionally, Naru kept transforming the earth into a mass of craters during that time. After 2 hours, the only things keeping Kakashi alive for the past 2 hours were his Sharingan and his reflexes. He hardly had the opportunity to counterattack, and he was perspiring from both fatigue and from officially being afraid of the young redhead. 1. Naru stood up and remarked, "I think it is time I finished this fight, Kakashi-san." Envious of Naru's endurance, Kakashi stammered, "Gee, go easy on this old man." "Well, no, now pay attention," Naru started, causing Kakashi to automatically glance at her face. To the horror of Kakashi, Naru began, "The ending of Jiraiya's manuscripts." Warning. No. Kakashi closed his ears and eyes and screamed. Naru walked up to him and took the bell off his belt, saying, "Too easy. Hey, Kakashi." Kakashi jolted out of his reverie and said, "How was I supposed to read the manuscript when I was with Ero Sennin the entire time?" She inquired, and Kakashi's eyes widened as he realized she had just pulled a practical joke on him. Before nodding at Sakura, Sasuke remarked, "Well, it looks like you are fairly skilled at fighting against single targets. But what about against 2 of us?" he inquired. With a fox-like and malevolent grin, Naru glanced at them both before snapping her knuckles. "Yes. You too, bring it. And don't think I'll be forgiving of you too, Datbeo." 5 minutes later, Sakura and Sasuke made the decision to join Kakashi in regretting some of their life choices. For starters, Naru was able to literally overwhelm them with clones this time, and they all knew how to fight. Sakura and Sasuke were completely outmatched, especially since Naru had been using her enhanced strength from the beginning, which was carried over to her clones. Sakura was shocked to learn that Naru's clones could actually catch her empowered punches. And it felt like Lee kicking her while wearing weights when those clones punched her. After learning these facts, the couple did the only thing they could think of: run. And that's exactly what they did. That is, until Naru decided to unleash a few of her own ninjutsu, which consisted of creating 100 clones that started swarming the area with fire and wind style jutsu and a few shadow shuriken jutsu. Training Ground 7 was more readily categorized as demolished beyond recognition Ground 7 by the time the couple turned themselves in. Naru remarked, "Ah, that felt good. Wiping the floor with us or sparring?" Sakura inquired. "Beating the shit out of you for one, since you usually did that to me back in the day." Naru started out. "Oh, and sorry Sasuke if you got caught in the crossfire there," she said lightly. "Oh, it's nothing to worry about. I was able to imitate a few of your jutsus," Sasuke remarked with a smile. "Oh, really?" Smirking, Naru said, "How about we do them then?" After smirking too, Sasuke performed a few hand signs, but nothing came of it. "What? Why isn't anything happening?" he asked, his eyes wide with confusion. Naru blurred through hand seals and remarked, "Maybe because you don't know how it works." As she spit out a few flaming foxes, they walked around her like devoted pets. "Kaiten. Hino Kitsune," she said. The others simply shook their heads in laughter, particularly when Naru snapped her fingers and the foxes charged at Sasuke, not exploding as they had anticipated but instead licking him like a good friend. "Should I cause them to blow up?" Out loud, Naru pondered. The other people said, "Please don't." Moegi remarked, "They look so cute and fluffy." Hinata and Tenten secretly concurred with their junior shinobi. "Do you want one?" Naru said. Snapping her finger again, two of the foxes disengaged from Sasuke and jumped into her arms. Or two. Naru kept wondering why in the world the group of ANBU in the surrounding woods were wearing blank masks. Later on in the day Kakashi, Asuma, Kurenai, Anko, who invited herself after learning Kurenai was going, Ino, who had just returned from her mission, Tsunade, Shizune, and Iruka were all at the barbecue joint with Naru. Naru had spent the entire day catching up with everyone since the sparring matches, and now it was her turn to share her story, except. "Yeah, Tsunade Oba-chan, why are so many Anbu pursuing me?" Naru inquired. "What are you saying?" Tsunade inquired, and Naru sighed before making a shadow clone and dispelling it. 6 more shadow clones soon followed, each carrying a masked shinobi in Anbu uniform over their shoulder, unconscious and tied up, with the masks being blank white save for the kanji beneath their left eyeholes. Naru nodded to her clones as they went to deliver their charges. "These are," Tsunade started, then grew irate. "Danzo, that old shit," she growled. "Send them over to T&I, will you?" Naru ran through a series of hand signs before saying, "Ninpo, Shinmoku no Kyu, Ninja Art, Sphere of Silence." They all sensed an unseen barrier engulfing them, but no one saw it. Naru started by saying, "Now I can talk without worry that anyone will listen in. I guess that I should start from the beginning." She then told them the majority of what had happened since setting sail, from the time she and Kakashi, Sasuke, and Sakura parted ways on the Nami shore until she returned, omitting information about the S-class missions and the fact that she had previously opened the gate to Kurama's seal. Before a certain pair of elders showed up, she had hoped that she would be able to tell her story without being interrupted. "Why aren't you in your office, Hokage-sama?" Homura inquired. Tsunade smirked and said, "I have completed the daily paperwork and deliberately omitted the shit you could have done yourselves. And go now. I would rather listen to Naru share her life story than hear your grievances." She gave Naru a loud slap and gave her a high five. With interest in the topic, Kaharu remarked, "Oh, in that case don't let our presence interrupt what you were saying." As the two elders opened their mouths to grumble, Naru added, "You have not earned my trust, ever. Sorry, you old fossils, but as it turns out, I have just finished telling my tale, and I don't feel like telling it again." "What does ever mean to you?" Homura inquired. Naru yelled at her, "Then tell me who it was who leaked the information about me being a Jinchuriki." "Well, it was," Kaharu started, then stopped when he realized he was speaking in front of Tsunade. The two elders glared at Tsunade for using Kaharu's own words against them, and she responded, half smirking, half glaring, "Oh, in that case don't let my presence interrupt what you were saying." Kaharu whispered, "You will hear about this later, Hokage-sama," and turned to go. She paused at Naru's words, not because of what she said, but because of the tone of her voice. "And if you do something because of this, let's just say that there won't be anything left other than a bloodstain." The icy tone of Naru's voice made everyone shudder. They hadn't anticipated this. "Is that dangerous?" Homura inquired. Naru got up and walked over to them, saying, "That and a promise. I am okay with being exiled from Konoha once more. I can simply ask to meet at any time outside of the village. You and that old freak Danzo are retired and now nothing more than civilians yourselves, So go and remove your noses from matters that don't concern you, such as shinobi business. Naru's eyes suddenly turned blood red, and her pupil turned into slits. Moreover, practically all of my friends know where I live, so they can come and visit me whenever they want. She stopped inches from the two elders. This is the final one I will offer you. For an instant, the entire restaurant was silent. In fact, it was so quiet that a passing patrol of Anbu entered to look into it. They saw Naru threatening the two elders and attempted to restrain her, but Tsunade gave them the all clear. You are not the only one who holds some cards, Uzumaki, Kaharu replied. Oh, really? Does it have anything to do with those ANBUs wearing blank masks who have been pursuing me all day? Inquired Naru. So it is Danzo who is ordering those guys around. The blank and perplexed expressions on Kaharu and Homura's faces gave her all the information she needed. With red eyes hardening and a rougher voice, Naru said, deliver this message to him then. Hurt anyone I care about, and the root of Konoha will be cut. Homura and Kaharu nodded and swallowed. All right. Naru reverted to her usual demeanor and said, now get lost before I find a reason to kick your asses out of here. After the elders departed, there was a prolonged period of silence. Until Lee grabbed a bottle of sake and remarked, I heard drinking makes you forget. All hell erupted. After a few days, Hinata somehow persuaded Tsunade to give her the time off so she could spend time with her crush. Make that former crush. And she finally accepted that she wouldn't be Naru's lifelong companion, instead attempting to become a lifelong friend. Sasuke and Sakura increased their training since Naru completely smashed them. Naru had been spending more time with her friends for the past few days. However, the entire Konoha 11 was now in full gear and standing in front of Tsunade and Shizune, who was holding her pet piglet, Taunton, at the main gate. Where are you heading now, brat? Tsunade inquired. Suna. Naru informed her, you know, I hadn't come here just to visit Konoha. Well, Tsunade smirked, I am sending the Konoha 11 with you, since you were a VIP after all. Naru, who had challenged them 2 days after Lee's drunken incident in the barbecue house, said, I wonder what the Suna Nin will think when they see one helpless little girl in the presence of 11 of Konoha's finest shinobi. The others laughed at her sarcasm. Luckily, Naru didn't let them know that she wasn't fighting at her best, and they lasted roughly twice as long as Kakashi. Additionally, an escort is typically thought to be more powerful than the VIP, which means. So hold on, are we escorting Naru or is Naru supposed to escort us? Sasuke inquired. As Tsunade put it, think of it as a bit of both. Picture it this way. I'll have you all do that since Naru gave Kakashi a scroll that he hadn't yet sent to Suna. Naru will escort you in that scenario. But since Naru is a VIP, she will require her own escort, so you will also be responsible for that. Shikamaru noted that it was troublesome. With a half-hearted glare from the Nara and giggles from the others, Naru joked, so is Tamari. She shifted her gaze from the bloody sword she was holding to the numerous corpses scattered across the floor before raising her gaze to her friends' horrified and shocked looks, one of whom in particular made her heart ache. What have you done, exactly? The individual inquired. Naru quickly sat up, breathing heavily and perspiring a little, then turned to face the surroundings. Other than a few minor annoyances and an unpleasant discovery, not much has happened in the week since Naru and the Konoha 11 left Konoha for Suna. Rewind, they were once ambushed by a sizable band of bandits who seemed to believe that facing 11 Chunin and Jonin was worthwhile, particularly if there was a sexy VIP present. As she fought off bandits left and right, Naru didn't even slow down. Her sword created a barrier that nothing could pass through, not even blood. The bandits had lost more than half of their numbers by the time they realized they had chosen the wrong group to attack, which took them around 30 seconds. Sasuke said, I thought you stopped taking lives. Without turning around, Naru remarked, what the mages don't know won't hurt them, and I never really stopped in the first place. Some of Ishgar's dark mages simply weren't worthy of another chance. There were women and children among the last group of experiments, Naru sighed, clenching her fist. And there were others, slaves and prisoners who had been tortured and experimented on to the point that they went crazy from the pain or suffering. Though shinobi are trained and bred to be killers, only the worst murder children, and only those as low as Orochimaru would experiment on children. Everyone stared at her in disbelief. Whatever became of them? Hinata inquired. Some fucked up mad scientist tried creating perfect weapons, you know the story. Naru sighed. And don't bother vowing his death, I doubt he survived a Bijudama point blank. Sasuke rubbed the spot where his cursed seal had been before it broke 7 years ago during his battle with Naru. The end of the flashback. Since then, a gang of renegade shinobi has only attacked them once. Naru allowed him to live, but he would always be missing something that only men have after one of them started bragging about how he had broken every single one of his victims by raping them into submission. Additionally, Naru deleted it while his allies were still around. None of the other rogue shinobi had seen her move, and they were all frightened by the image of a very angry, dangerous, and scary redhead holding the remnants of his manhood after she tore it off. The males in the Konoha 11 avoided looking because they knew it would hurt them too, the females because they didn't want to witness something they would prefer to forget for the rest of their lives, and Akamaru, who joined the males, was the last to turn away. The screams of pain that followed were ignored by all of them. As they proceeded, they left behind a group of shinobi who were severely injured but still alive, only one of whom was bleeding. Additionally, Naru's 3 bothersome habits, loud snoring, sleepwalking, attacking, and sleep-talking, kept them all awake at night and were forgotten in the 7 years since she left. On the first night, a completely unconscious and unexpectedly normal Sennin Garashi threw Sakura flying, screaming into a nearby river about 200 meters away. They discovered him the following morning after he had broken through a dozen trees, at least. On the second night, Naru started yelling in her sleep about kicking bandit ass, beating up mages, and ramen. Kiba attempted to wake her up, but was punched in the face. The first and only night the others could sleep soundly on their mission to Suna was the third night Naru began sleepwalking, and Shikamaru used his shadow to guide her back to her bed. The fourth night was intriguing. Naru was speaking in her sleep once more, but the subject matter was dubious. Everyone, with the exception of Lee, was rivaling Hinata in having red faces after hearing the phrases. "You said you liked them bigger, Erza." "Yes, lick that, that's the spot," and other groans and groans. Eventually, Shino used his insects to make makeshift earplugs for everyone, but the damage was done, and the following day, none of them could look at Naru with a straight face. Only Sasuke and Sakura survived the 5th night, when Naru began to use offensive ninjutsu, because they remembered to lie down motionless and to never move a muscle. Without his weight on, even Lee was finding it difficult to approach Naru. When a still slumbering Naru stepped in front of Hinata and kissed her directly, she was rendered unconscious more quickly than a mouse struck by a senbon with horse tranquilizer. Although everyone was on edge from the previous night, the 6th night was quiet. When Naru returned to Magnolia, she was grinning like a fox and mumbling about tricks to play, and something about playing a practical joke on the council in Erza. Even though night 5 was very close, none of them could bring themselves to despise her during all of this. Fortunately, on the 7th day they arrived in the desert. "Righto, from here on out, it'll be difficult to find Sunagakure," Sakura replied. "The sand dunes always change and shift, so they cannot be used as a reference." "Oh. Yes, that's good to know. I'll follow you guys then," Naru said. Everyone gave her a startled look before realizing that she had never been to Suna before. "There is a patrol of shinobi approaching," Hinata said, calling for them to stop with her Byakugan active after they had perhaps crossed the sand 100 times. The Suna symbol is displayed on their headbands. Shikamaru muttered, "Well, that would make things a lot easier," but everyone could hear him. "Look for the positive side of things." He narrowed his eyes at her and moaned something about troublesome redheads who can read minds. After Naru said, "Now you'll get to see Tamari a bit earlier than expected." After a little laugh, Sasuke launched a low-powered fireball into the air to let the oncoming Suna patrol know where they were. They arrived in a short amount of time. "Who visits that place?" one of them inquired. Sasuke handed over their mission documents and reported, "Teams 7, 8, 9, and 10 from Konohagakure, along with VIP to see Kazekage-sama." After reading the documents, the Suna nin nodded and returned them, saying, "Everything is in order. Let us guide you to Suna." Sasuke replied, "Book appreciated." "Hey, when did Sasuke start acting so formal?" Naru asked Sakura in a whisper, "Isn't he typically all haughtiness and grunts?" She had been heard, and Kiba had to suppress a laugh. "In the 7 years since you departed from us, that's when," replied Sakura. They persisted in their journey, overcoming sporadic groups of desert raiders and desert animals, one of which Naru personally killed when it attempted to devour her, and finally reached Suna's entrance, where the guards stopped them. Unfortunately, Naru persisted in her sleep talk, walk, and attacks over the course of the following 3 days, strangely excluding the Suna nin. However, on the first night in the desert, Tenten woke up inside a sand sculpture of a statue that looked a lot like Guy. Only Lee thought it looked amazing, but Neji discovered that he was wearing a green spandex outfit that matched Guy and Lee's, much to his dismay. When the others realized that, well, there were quite a few red faces among the shinobi, Ino turned to glare at Naru, who was asking what the hell happened. On the second night, Ino found herself in a bit of a pickle. When she woke up, she was buried almost vertically, but with the head positioned so that it looked like she was lying down, and she could feel the sand against her bare skin. Fortunately, the following day they reached Sunagakure. Naru went straight to the bathroom after checking into a hotel and created a few clones, who then started using water jutsu to spray the original to remove all the dust and sand that had accumulated in her hair. The case cage had been expecting them since he got the message from Tsunade, so it didn't take long for him to call them. In the office of the case cage, Gaara greeted his 11 friends and one redhead he vaguely recognized as they entered his office, saying, "Welcome to Suna." Sakura said, "Happy to be here, Gaara-sama," in a formal manner. "All right, Gaara. Hasn't it been a long time?" The redhead uttered those words. Gaara glanced at her and blinked, a gesture that his siblings, who were also present, noticed and, to be honest, found startling and frightening. "Shukaku is crying in fear and huddling in a corner. It can't be," Gaara said. "Yeah, the furball wishes to send his regard and wishes to go to town at that sand plushie, again," the blonde replied. Gaara simply stared at her for a minute or two before. "Why, hello there gorgeous." Kankuro started making out with the redhead. "This shit once more." "Hey, Kankuro," the redhead sighed. "Are you still wearing makeup?" Kankuro changed his mind and said, "Warpaint," he snarled. The redhead turned Kankuro to face a mirror and said, "Even after 7 years, it could still fool me." Then she pulled out a brush and started drawing on his face, shocking him into paralysis. A little bit here, some there, done. When Kankuro saw what she had drawn on his face, his eyes widened and he appeared to be a clown. "Naru?" Gaara's question caused Kankuro to look at the redhead in realization before he could lash out, while the Konoha 11 were suppressing their laughter at Kankuro being treated so cruelly. Naru approached Gaara and gave him a hug, saying, "Yep." She felt a surge of jealousy in the roof above her, as if one of Gaara's Anbu had a crush on him. "It's good to see you again." After a while, Gaara awkwardly gave the hug back. It didn't take Kankuro an hour to enter a restaurant with a girl. Naru spent a few days in Suna, catching up with Gaara and Tamari. Kankuro tried to get her back for painting on his face, but it always ended badly. However, in the end, she did help him get a girl by making it look like she was painting his face again, but in reality, she took off all the paint. However, she had to depart too soon because she would have to return to Magnolia again and her allotted time in the elemental nations was running out. She made a one-day stop in Konoha on the way back to Nami in order to resolve some issues with Jiraiya and Tsunade, play a final practical joke on the civilian council, and remind a certain mummified belligerent of a promise and a threat. And when she set sail again, her friends saw her again, but this time, they said goodbye to her team as well as to all of her friends. After a week, Magnolia with a sigh, a lone redhead in armor entered the guild building. She turned to see Natsu coming with a stunning white-haired girl who resembled Mira. "Yo, Erza. Any news from Naru?" "None yet, she is scheduled to return any day now though," Erza replied. The girl remarked, "I wonder how much she changed since I last saw her." Gray shivered and said, "Definitely nothing like her Edalus counterpart." Natsu shivered too, and the girl giggled. "So, what are you expecting?" The only person who could compete head-to-head with Erza Nightwalker was her, our guildmaster in Edalus, she said. Erza said, don't remind me," recalling Naru's opposite, who was the exact opposite of her in every way. She was meek and so shy that she managed to stutter in silence, but when she was fighting, she was loud, carried a huge sword, and shouted loud enough that those around her had to wear earplugs. When they heard the sound of cannon fire, the entire guild rushed outside to look at the ocean. There, they saw an unfortunate pirate ship firing at a ship that was approaching. The ship was firing wave after wave of water dragons and fireballs, and behind them, a few razor winds. As he settled in to watch the show, Gray remarked, "Well, that answers when Naru will be back." His example was followed by the other guild members, who watched their resident redhead wizard saint going easy on the pirates while Mira brought out several crates of ale for them to drink and enjoy. A little while later, following some time spent chasing the pirates, Naru made the decision to head for the harbor, where she moored the ship in its proper spot. She barely made it out of the ship with all of her belongings and mementos enclosed in her scrolls before a very familiar redhead slammed into her and gave her a spine-tingling hug. "Hey, Chan." Naru hugged me back. "You miss me?" What on earth is such a greeting? But yes, I did, Erza inquired. Welcome back. Naru replied, good to be back. Then, he looked up to see Fairy Tail and the rest of Team Natsu standing there. Did anything happen while I was away? Naru inquired. With a crazy smile, Natsu remarked, oh the usual, something happened and we beat the shit out of it. I have become pretty strong now, I could probably beat you. Oh, is that difficult? Naru smiled at the young dragon slayer and asked. Natsu fired up his magic and said, damn right it is. N. Pun not intended. The poor child is trapped inside the guild hall wall of Fairy Tail 3 seconds later. Naru looked around and said, oh in gray. Ah, forgot to hold back there, Naru muttered. Meh, he'll survive, probably. N. Pun also not intended. The ice mage glanced at her but froze when he saw her incredibly charming smile. Yeah? He inquired, disliking the direction this was taking. What did I say would happen if you forgot to remove your boxers the next time? Naru inquired. Oh Gray looked down and started to perspire. He was later discovered in the wall, almost all the way through, right next to Natsu. Is it true that Naru-ne hasn't changed all that much? Naru stopped to listen to the voice, which she hadn't heard in 2 years and would never forget because the owner was almost referred to as a sister by Naru and the other guild members. Lee-sana, Naru remarked, and when she looked up, she saw a stunning girl with short white hair who looked very much like Mira. She was about Natsu's height, if not slightly taller, and had breasts that rivaled Kana's. She was dressed in a sky blue and white outfit that exposed her white fairy tail tattoo on her left thigh. 1. Naru simply stood there stunned. Prior to many in the guild wanted to see who would hug block her because when they attempted to do so to Lee-sana a few days ago, Elfman sent them all flying with a punch. Naru's footsteps shook the ground, and she let out anime tears of joy and threw a leaping hug at her. They were shocked when Naru slammed into Lee-sana and nothing happened. Welcome back, little sis. Naru exclaimed, her face streaming with tears of happiness. After giving you a hug in return, Lee-sana joked, I should be telling you that, Naru-ne. How was the journey to your birthplace? Naru released the hug and remarked, could have been better had the damn council there not tried to forcefully conscript me. A certain short guild master, dressed as a jester, came up to them before anyone could start asking more questions. Let's give Naru some time to relax now. She must be exhausted from her long journey, but rest is one of the last things she will receive, knowing Erza, Makarov remarked. Everyone agreed with that last statement, but 2 reheads turned their heads away, their faces flushed. Oh, did I miss anything? Lee-sana inquired inquisitively. Erza started to say, yes, well, but Naru beat her to the punch and whispered something into Lee-sana's ear, causing the young snowflake to become red and wide-eyed. It seemed as though she was exhaling metaphorical steam. Now proceed. The others stared at her in confusion, but Naru patted her shoulder and said, I am sure you will be able to handle it. But how should I go about doing it? Flustered, Lee-sana asked. Oh, do you want me to extend the same offer to Mira? Naru inquired, beaming like a fox, a cunning, evil fox, to be exact. Lee-sana said, anything but that. At this point, everyone was perplexed and talking among themselves in silence. Naru pointed toward the guild and said, then off you go. Lee-sana was gone before most people could blink. Rolling her shoulders and popping her joints audibly, Naru remarked, ah, revenge is sweet. What did you tell her, Naru-san? Wendy inquired. As she left the harbor and headed home, Naru smiled and said, oh, you'll see in a few days, if not tomorrow. Erza, Lucy, and, of course, Mira and Elfman followed her, all of whom wanted the details as soon as possible, though the latter two wanted to protect their sister. That day, they were all reminded that Naru had the capacity to be more obstinate than 20 mules put together. Time skipping as promised, the next day, when Gray shared what he had heard the day before, the entire guild learned what Naru had told Lee-sana. So wait, in return for Lee-sana getting the information on Naru's relationship with Erza, she had to convince Natsu to go out on a date with her. Elfman was taken aback. And it is perfect revenge for that one time she somehow managed to trick me and Loki into going on a blind date, Naru said, confirming Gray's admission. Not until Lee-sana's disappearance did the two of them discover who had set them up, but everyone laughed when they recalled the expression on Naru's and Loki's faces when they realized they had been set up. Considering that it was officially Naru's first date, the blind date had actually gone surprisingly well. Following Loki's suggestion, they went to see a movie before heading to the Fighters Guild, where a tag team battle competition was going on. Although Loki was defeated badly, not by Naru, for once, he did receive a sizable payment when Naru invoked an old rule that allowed any competitor to call for an all-on-one match, which pitted her against every other competitor. Unbeknownst to everyone, Naru easily outclassed every fighter with the unnecessary use of chakra augmentation, even though she didn't technically use magic and magic in general wasn't permitted in the tournament. Just so you know, she paid about 5 million jewels for her house the following day. Loki used half of his winnings to date women, including some of the former council members' granddaughters. He denied every single rumor, but it is said that he went a little further than dating with one or two of them. I'm getting off topic, am I not? Mira and her siblings set out on the fateful mission the day after the blind date, leaving as a trio but returning as a duo. Well, I am just glad you got revenge on her by getting her to date someone, Mira replied. As Naru put it, oh, I think she'll have her work cut out for her. Remember, she has to get Natsu to agree to go on a date with her. Naru struck a contemplative pose. Yet again, happy, she yelled. Moments later, the blue cat shot into the air at full speed. You called? Don't eat me, please, he screamed in terror so as not to enrage Naru. Naru said, hey, chill out. Then, loud enough for the others to hear, she gave the blue cat some instructions. I want you to go and make photos of every cute and embarrassing moment Lisana and Natsu will have together, and in return, I'll give you 30 fishes. Happy drooled at the prospect of 30 fishes before. Yes. A CT now, he exclaimed with enthusiasm as he produced a camera from somewhere. Even Mira shuddered at Naru's malevolent smirk. As she worked at the bar as usual, Mira hummed to herself while serving drinks and turning down dates in a way that made no one angry, unless the request came from a certain perverted, short, and elderly guild master. She simply activated her all-too-sweet smile, death aura, and death glare when she was with him. If today had changed anything, it was that she would now have concrete proof that her younger sister Lisana had succeeded in persuading Natsu to go on a date with her. Mira quickly reminded everyone to thank Naru for using his camera to send that blue furball on a spying mission. About 30 high-resolution HD full-color photos of Lisana and Natsu acting like a couple, with the final image depicting them sealing the deal, are what constitute that proof. Mira laughed and considered making fun of Lisana for this, but she changed her mind. However, one person was still unaware. We're back, the entrance called out. Speaking of the devil, Laxus and his gang are about to arrive. Mira called out, oh, Laxus. Welcome back. Leaning against the bar, Laxus remarked, hard to believe it is that time of year already, isn't it? Mira informed him, it is still a few weeks away though. Usually the others would be out taking jobs from the board. Laxus decreased his speed upon noticing that the mission board was entirely vacant. Well, that's new. Mira cleaned the glass and said, I know right? Oh, and a few things have changed while you were out on your mission. Mira responded. Oh, anything interesting I should know about? Asked the man. Brixlow, Freed, and Evergreen leaned in, curious. Observing Laxus's grin widen, Mira declared, Naru is back. Beer? Inquired Mira. Laxus gave a nod. When Mira unveiled the next item, he was already on his second gulp. And Natsu and Lisana are Fairy Tail's newest official couple. Mira just stood there, expecting that the beer in the Thunder Tribe's mouths would collide with her. Evergreen questioned, did you just say Natsu and Lisana? Freed questioned incredulously, how did she manage to get him to go out with her? Brixlow continued, yeah, Natsu is denser than lead. There is no way that those two are dating. The others said that they agreed. Mira simply stood there grinning the entire time. As they started drinking their beers again, she asked, would you like to see the proof? After this, she would smell like beer for days. Speaking of the newest couple, neither Natsu nor Lisana, nor the rest of Team Natsu and Team Redhead, were currently members of the guild. They were on one of several missions they had previously gathered from the mission board, all of which were in the same vicinity, saving them the trouble of traveling far between them. Lisana was with them for two reasons. A. To spend time with Natsu, including training, and B. To minimize, if at all possible, the unavoidable collateral damage that he alone causes. She is not liable for any collateral harm that Lucy and Gray cause. Additionally, they encountered Erza, who was in the same area on a solo mission. Furthermore, Lisana will not even entertain the idea of attempting to change her habits that are prone to collateral damage. Naru was the one with that job. Speaking of that specific redhead, she was still in Magnolia, serving a mandatory house arrest sentence imposed by almost the entire guild after an incident that happened on the evening of the day that Natsu and Lisana went on their date. Rewind after their first date, feeling happier than they had in a long time, Natsu and Lisana were making their way to the guild when they ran into Charla, Wendy, Happy, who had long since brought Naru a particular package, and Lucy. Church bells ringing interrupted their conversation, which essentially consisted of the latter three questioning Natsu and Lisana about their new relationship. As all friends do these days. This ringing technique, it can't be, Natsu exclaimed with joy. I said Happy. Both of them exclaimed, he's back, into the sky. Lisana reminisced, they still have this system in place, Charla, Wendy, and Lucy gave them strange looks as they tried to figure out what was happening. A group of flying loudspeakers yelled, everyone, please head to the designated locations in preparation for Gildarts shift. Lucy, Wendy, and Charla were shocked and alarmed when the ground shook and started to move a minute or so later. 1. Back at the guild in the meantime Naru leaned back against the bar and said, so he's finally back, Erza was eating a slice of strawberry cake while sitting normally next to her. She remarked, it's been what, 2, 3 years? Naru concurred, something like that. I wonder if Gildarts managed to complete the mission, Mira responded. The people who joined after Gildarts left for that 100-year quest wondering who the hell deserved the city to receive a terraforming machine with his name on it waited until the quacking stopped. The sheer number of, this way, signs on the floor, directly down the center of the corridor formed by the terraforming action, left those outside in a state of shock. Naturally, Lucy asked, what kind of idiot is this? And Charla concurred. Not long after a tall man with blue eyes, a beard, and brown hair caught everyone's attention. His traveling gear was strapped to his back, and a ragged black cloak covered his entire body. He halted his stroll near the bar and glanced around, perplexed. Mira said, welcome back, Gildarts. Gildarts said, oh, it's good to be back. And then turned to look around once more. There used to be a guild name's Fairy Tale around here, would you happen to know where it is? Except for Mira, everyone faceplanted. Makarov, standing atop the bar, said, this is Fairy Tale, Gildarts. With a metallic hand, Gildarts said, oh, master. Long time no see. I see you have done some remodeling. A voice at their side said, you could say that. Gildarts turned to see two attractive redheads, one of whom was almost starting his flirtatious engine without armor. Who are you? Gildarts said, gesturing to one of them before turning to face Mira. Before she burst out laughing like she used to, Mira said, Era, Gildart. Have you really forgotten about us? After a brief moment of staring at her, Gildart's eyes widened in recognition. Mira? That's me. It was her response. He pointed to the two redheads and remarked, then these two must be Erza and Naru. I must say, the three of you have grown. He was referring to their stature and strength, but his expression conveyed a completely different message. He went over to Naru and said, nay, Naru. Can I ask you something? Then. She said, sure. What is it? Gildarts abruptly began to touch Naru's enormous chest and asked, are these real? Naru roared, where the hell are you touching, ya fucking pervert? And punched Gildarts in the chin with all of his strength, sending him flying toward the roof. Then Naru noticed that Gildarts' traveling rope was tied to her ankle for some reason. Naru cried out, oh she as she was dragged forward by momentum. When the two mages landed on the beach outside the city, it essentially turned into a brawl, with Gildarts having to stop holding back so he wouldn't lose to her. Gildarts was standing over a severely bruised Naru who was unconscious and lying in a sand crater when the other mages arrived. Though, to be honest, he had enjoyed the fight. Gildarts himself was exhausted from the brief but brutal altercation and had a few fist-shaped bruises on his body. 2. The end of the flashback the following day. Naru was essentially placed under house arrest to allow her to recuperate from her altercation with Gildarts, not as a form of punishment. However, she still managed to sneak out and play some practical jokes on the poor man. The poor man was unaware that the devil-like emoji on the back of his jacket was saying, "Kick me now," sign in its hand. And most of the time, Natsu was more than happy to comply. She spent the remainder of her time writing letters to particular individuals in the elemental nations and shopping for supplies and equipment. She received letters in exchange from Tsunade, Kakashi, Gaara, and pretty much everyone else who got a scroll from her. Additionally, Jiraiya sent her the rights to sell his books in Ishgar and his most recent works since 7 years ago, in accordance with the agreement she coerced him into by threatening his manhood. Overall, she was essentially prepared for life in the book sales industry alone. She muttered to herself, I wonder who Gigi will nominate for the S-class exams. Given that she has been vying for the S rank for the past few years, Kana is a given. Gray and Natsu will most likely be selected as well. Despite their appearance, those two are already low S rank. Apart from the fact that he was an S rank in Phantom, Gajeel hasn't been in the guild long enough to be eligible. No, he probably won't run for office. Since she became an S rank, Naru has considered this every year because she typically assisted in reducing their numbers, that is, she beat the living daylights out of the competitors. The only thing that separates her and Erza in that sense is that Naru can hold back, somewhat, for the most part. After a week the whole guild was gathered in the main hall, with many of them anticipating what would happen. Meanwhile, newcomers like Wendy, Lucy, Charla, and Panther Lily, a black exceed that Gajeel had picked up in Edalus, were curious about the reason for the tension in the air. Makarov, Laxus, Mirajane, Erza, Naru, and Gildarts were eventually revealed when the curtain rose. All conversation stopped at once. Makarov said, "Fairy tale, first." The crowd erupted in loud cheers as the speaker announced, "As we have done since days long past, I will now announce the participants in this year's S-Class Wizard Advancement exam." Then there were others like Lucy, who had shocked, round eyes. Natsu, for example, says, "I'm all fired up. You know how he is." Erza started, everyone but Naru completed it. "Shut up." Her roar was met with silence. "Thank you, now Gigi isn't finished yet." Makarov went on, "This year's exam will take place on Tenrojima, Heaven Wolf Island. It is holy ground for our guild." When Lucy inquired about the type of test in the crowd, she was told that it varies annually and is always very challenging. "Each of your powers, heart and souls, I have judged them all this past year." Makarov went on, "There will be 8 participants this year." There was a deafening silence of anticipation. Natsu Dragneel. "All right." Natsu was becoming very agitated. Happy said, "Good for you, Natsu," to his friend. Gray Fullbuster. "At last, the moment has arrived." Gray grinned expectantly. Juvia Loxer. "What?" Naru pondered. That call was unexpected. Prior to being nominated to become a S-class wizard, this was most likely the shortest period of time anyone had been a member. Juvia was too stunned to react appropriately. Elfman. Elfman declared, "Those who are men should become S-class." Elf Nichan. "Try your hardest," Lisanna exclaimed. Kana Alberona. For some reason, Kana did not appear to be happy. Fried Justine. Fried remarked, "I can finally follow Laxus's footsteps." To the blonde S-rank mage beside her, Naru whispered, "Hey, Laxus, you've got a fanboy." He stifled a shiver and whispered back, "Don't remind me." Levi Magarden. She only said, "Finally, I." All right, Naru thought resignedly, they might as well send in the half-pint if Juvia is going. Meanwhile, she was encouraged by Levi's group of fanboys. Mest Grider. A 2-bit zigzag expert, Naru pondered. Having met Mest on multiple occasions during his mission, she was well acquainted with him and frequently served as a liaison between him and Master Makarov. "At least he's relatively fast, much faster than me. Damn teleportation magic. So unfair." Those with high expectations felt a little depressed after the announcement of the 8 participants. "Well, I guess this explains why everyone was trying so hard this last week," Lucy said. Makarov declared, "This time, only one of you will pass. The exam will take place in a week. Better prepare yourselves." Another round of applause. "As this is the first time for some of you, let us explain the rules." Makarov started off. "Each of the 8 selected participants, please select a partner within the week of preparation," Mira responded. "Partner?" inquired Lucy. Max informed her that it was a competition between 2-person teams. Warren remarked, "This exam tests your bonds with your friends. There are 2 rules for the partners you can choose." Erza said. 1. They must be a member of Fairy Tail. 2. You cannot partner with S-class wizards. So in other words, you can't form a team with Erza, Mirajane, Laxus, Gildarts or Naru, Lily said. "Being with Erza-san or Naru-san would make you far too powerful, after all," Wendy replied. "The contents of the exam itself will be announced once you arrive at Tenrojima." Makarov continued, "But this time, Erza will be blocking your progress." Erza stood next to him, wearing a smile that seemed to have been stolen from Naru whenever she was hatching a cunning plan. Exclaimed the stunned audience. I'll also help out to get in your way, Mira exclaimed, beaming broadly. One more, round, Laxus went on to say, so will I. A third round. Lucy was relieved she wasn't chosen as a competitor. Don't tell me, you can't become S-class without defeating any of them? She exclaimed. Well, I am sure they'll hold back a bit, said Max. Believe me now when I said it is going to be hard? Said Warren. Gildarts said, no complaining, all S-class wizards have gone through the same path. Hold on a second, Elfman, trembling with shock and fear. Don't tell me, Happy's situation didn't improve much. On the contrary, Natsu said, you're gonna participate too, Gildarts? To everyone else in the room. For some reason, Kaina's gaze was fixed on Gildarts. Everyone then turned to gaze at Naru. Unfortunately, due to my status as a wizard saint, I am unable to participate as an obstacle, unless you want me to, Naru replied. Hell no, was the resounding response. However, I will be accompanying them to Tenrojima as one of the examiners, Naru replied. The news caused a number of people to sigh with relief. Even though Naru is a good friend, no one wanted to be in a fight with her. Makarov dismissed the participants and everyone went in search of partners after announcing that they had to be in Harjin town by the end of the week. Everyone had found a partner by the end of the day. Naturally, Natsu teamed up with Happy. In order to increase Natsu's physical durability, Happy rolled 100 tons of stones down a hill directly at him while he was tied to a tree. This was the start of their training, according to the Blue Cat. Lucy was shocked and furious when Gray teamed up with Leo, who was still a fairy tale mage in theory. Juvia almost saw Lisanna as a rival for Gray's love, but she managed to worm her way into becoming her partner. Freed and Brixlow were another unsurprising team, at least, not surprising insofar as he didn't pick Evergreen. As Levy struggled to choose between her teammates, Gajeel came up behind her, grabbed her by the collar, and declared that he would transform her into a S-class mage. As he said that, he failed to notice Levy's blush. Lucy found Kaina in the evening. She was covered in a thick layer of snow and completely smashed. She declared herself to be Kaina's partner after Lucy wooed her and coerced her into giving up some information, completely oblivious to the possibility of encountering monsters like Erza and Laxus. Lucy watched in disbelief and shock as Kaina revealed a secret to her. To the ire of a certain white cat who couldn't get rid of a negative feeling she had about him, Mest chose to join forces with Wendy. Elfman was a unique individual. He was upset that his intended teammate was going with someone else after learning that Lisanna wanted to work with Juvia. However, the teammate pointed out a very angry woman sitting at the bar who was looking at him with intense eyes. Elfman, who was somewhat aware of what the woman in question could do with her eyes, described it as a stare that will turn you to stone, while Lisanna described it as a passionate stare. Indeed, it was hard to discern Evergreen's thoughts. On the second floor, Laxus exclaimed, "Huh? Ever is teaming up with Elfman? I pity him. I think that the two of them might actually hook up," Naru replied. A grin started to appear on her face. The red-haired saint turned to face Laxus as he said, "Whatever evil scheme you were planning there, make sure that you leave both of them alive afterwards, okay?" "Oh, I half expected you to complain about me trying to be a matchmaker," Naru replied. "And give you a reason to trying to hook me up with someone? No thanks," Laxus responded. "I am too young to give up my freedom." Makarov, off to the side, could only nod in agreement with his grandson's insightful remarks. Time skipping after a swift week, all 8 pairs of mages had reached the Harjin port and were waiting for their transport. And for some reason, Evergreen and Elfman were wearing glowing blushes and avoiding each other. With the exception of one mage, all 8 pairs of mages were suffering from the intense heat. Additionally, Natsu was suffering from motion sickness, his #1 arch nemesis, which never fails to show up and ruin his life. She also thought it wise to avoid casting Troya on him because Wendy had already been selected by someone else. Makarov, meanwhile, was enjoying life while sporting shorts and a Hawaiian shirt and fanning himself. After describing the first round, he unveiled a diagram that showed 8 distinct routes, 4 of which had the words, "pitched battle," and the face of an S-rank mage on them, 2 of which converged in a section with the word, "battle," on it, 1 of which had the word, "challenge," on it, and the 8th route with the words, "free pass." Since Naru's face appears on the challenge route, most, if not all, of the competitors are immediately leery of it and wish they wouldn't pick it. Everyone sighed in relief as Makarov said, "Oh, don't worry about the challenge route. You are not going to have to fight there. You'll just have to overcome one of your fears, from what Naru told me." But without their knowledge, Naru had been monitoring each and every one of them, including their worst fears. The loss of his family, transportation, and the inability to act when his loved ones are in danger were Natsu's biggest fears. Getting no fish was Happy's biggest fear. Being trapped in a room with a lustful Juvia attempting to get in his pants was Gray's worst nightmare. Naru hoped that her acting abilities were still at their best for this. Being barred from the celestial realm once more was Loke's biggest fear. Juvia's biggest fear was that Gray would die in front of her, or simply pass away. Naru would enjoy that. Losing Natsu or Happy, another sibling with whom Naru would have a great time, was Lisana's biggest worry. Elfman's biggest fears were losing his family and Evergreen's icy stare, which would make you turn to stone if she discovers that he received a deck of cards with images of Ever in various bikinis and underwear on each one. Accepting that she was beginning to fall in love with Elfman was Evergreen's biggest fear, particularly after a few pictures of Elfman working out were smuggled into Ever's apartment. Not being able to follow in Laxus's footsteps was Freed's biggest fear. Being by himself was Brixlow's biggest fear. Strangely, Kana's biggest fear was not going without food or drink, but rather having non-alcoholic drinks. In fact, that one came in second. In the past few years, Naru may or may not have been investigating Kana's mother, Cornelia, but her biggest fear was that her father, whoever he is, would say he wasn't proud of her. When it came to the challenge, Naru was unsure of which weakness to pick. Naru has high hopes for Lucy because she has a bothersome habit of conquering her greatest fear, which was pretty much anything and anything stronger than her. Naru had another plan for her, then. Losing faith in himself was Mest's biggest fear. Pickled plums were Wendy's biggest phobia. Naru had purchased a big jar of them. Confession to Gajeel was Levy's biggest fear. She had developed a crush on the real Gajeel ever since he apologized profusely to everyone in Fairy Tail. Gajeel's biggest fear was going up against Naru in combat because he knew he couldn't compete with her. This is not to imply that Naru was unaware of her fellow S-class mages' anxieties. Like Elfman and Lisana, Myra's biggest fear was losing her family. Transportation, especially when Erza is driving, and Naru arranging a blind date were Laxus's biggest fears. Finding out that the guild has run out of strawberry cake or losing Naru's love and trust are Erza's two biggest fears. Finding out that he has a son or daughter from one of his numerous previous flings is Gildarts' biggest fear. He left them fatherless for the rest of their lives, not because he fathered a bastard child. But let's get back to the story. To the dismay of the others, Natsu and Happy jumped into the air as soon as Makarov announced that the competitors could begin, only to collide with a rune wall. Fried and Brixlow informed them that the runes would only last 5 minutes as they flew in the direction of the island. Levy would also be able to get through if it's runes, Lucy remarked, and the half-pint Bluenet did so that she and Gajeel could pass. Evergreen, who had previously learned some runes from Fried, did the same for Elfman and herself. The others were extremely irritated by both of these acts and informed Makarov that they were not permitted. Hey, it's not like it is a race or anything. Makarov fannied himself carelessly. The ship experienced widespread depression as a result. After 4 minutes and 32 seconds the rune trap vanished with the sound of glass breaking. Happy flew Natsu to the island right away. When Lucy and Kana leapt overboard, they discovered that Gray, who had discovered some genes somewhere, had transformed the ocean into ice and created ice skates for Loke and himself. On the opposite side, Juvia had transformed into water and was swimming with a white-haired fish, Lisana. Lucy yelled, "Wait a moment, Kana, we're last. Stop being so dumb. Mest and Wendy are." Kana looked up. "Not there anymore. Wait, where did they go?" They swam to the island as fast as they could, swimming at a pace that would have made Jet proud. After a while using a strange reasoning that even Happy found embarrassing, Natsu concluded that Erza should be en route E since it was the initial letter of her name. But rather than Erza, he found Gildarts, grinning expectantly. The wise one, Happy, wanted to leave the place immediately, but the foolish one, Natsu. He roared at Gildarts, who unintentionally used disassembly magic on Natsu, transforming him into an army of tiny munchkins. To put it succinctly, he charged Gildarts, got beaten black and blue, and then charged again, this time using magic-powered fists. He didn't even scratch Gildarts. Thinking that he had an advantage over Gildarts this time, that of numbers, Natsu charged again, employing his peculiar logic. Gildarts smiled, but then a swarm of miniature Natsus shot fire directly into his face, slightly enraged as they managed to singe his beard. He made the decision to transform Natsu back into his original form, but was taken aback when Natsu transformed right next to him and used the full-power secret dragon slaying technique, Crimson Lotus, exploding flame blade to push the older mage back by a good 2 meters. After concluding that Natsu was strong enough to pass, Gildarts chose to impart one final lesson to him. He let his strength run wild, and that is that, unless you allow it to rule you, fear is not bad. Gildarts proceeded to subdue Natsu with a glare. In the interim, in the pitched battle, Root, Gray and Loke ultimately faced off against Mest and Wendy. They defeated Mest by using their ice bazooka to blast him with light after he kicked their asses repeatedly. They didn't even try to stop her, Wendy. They made her eat a jar of pickled plums in front of her and pushed her into a corner. Although she didn't live long, the incident would follow her for years. Erza was the only thing standing between Juvia and Lisana in the flooded tunnel. Don't hold back. She washed the debris in the tunnel with Juvia using Lisana. Fried and Brixlow faced off against Laxus, whom they did not wish to engage in combat with. He also forgot to hold back during the fight, leaving Fried and Brixlow in an area that smelled of ozone and was blackened by intense electricity. A battle-savvy demon known as Mirajane faced Evergreen and Elfman, and no matter what they attempted, she beat them mercilessly. It was only after Evergreen attempted to emulate Naru and troll her a little by claiming that she and Elfman were getting married that they were able to get past her. Elfman knew she was beasting Mira right away, so he played along, shocking her and letting the two of them hit her with a few serious blows before leaving before she could come to. Regretfully, a certain redhead had installed Lacrima sound recording devices at each route. To put it another way, they had just created a hole for themselves. The safe route was the fortunate choice made by Levi and Gajil, much to the latter's outrage. There, they conversed with one another. Lucy and Kana most likely took the worst path. Challenge. With Lucy and Kana, Lucy cried out in a fit of rage, no, as she was made to participate in a number of sultry photo shoots while sporting skimpy bikinis and belly dancer attire. She was unaware that Jason, who was taking the pictures, was merely a clone of Naru, disguised to look like the overly enthusiastic weekly sorcerer reporter. She even added some of her own peculiarities. That's good, Lucy. Now how about giving us a topless shot next? Something along those lines. This did not amuse Lucy, but she persisted. When Jason finally untied the hinge and gave Lucy the photos she had taken, Lucy immediately tore them all to pieces. However, her face stayed red for a long time after that. Kana, on the other hand, was in hell. Naruto had offered her a choice between bottles and barrels, and because she was an alcoholic, she went with the barrels, which held non-alcoholic beverages. In the end, she had to consume 3 barrels of fresh grape juice. She led them to a nearby rock pool where they could change their clothes and wash themselves after the two of them succeeded in passing her challenge. Afterwards in the meeting when Gray and Loke got there, they discovered that Kana and Lucy, Levi and Gajil, and Natsu and Happy had already gone by. Makarov and Naru showed up shortly after they got there, providing information about who had passed which route. Everyone turned to stare at the couple in shock as Naru declared, Kana and Lucy passed my challenge with flying colors. Lucy appeared embarrassed, and Kana looked down uneasily. Under the glares of all the females, Naru said to Gray and Loke soundly and sadistically defeated Mest and Wendy and passed. But seriously, doing something that mean to Wendy? Natsu and Happy somehow managed to get past Gildarts, and passed, Makarov stated. Say what? Exclaimed Gray. Makarov went on to say, Levi and Gajil had good luck and went through the peaceful route. Gajil received a few tick marks, and Levi made the peace sign. He yelled, you saying I got lucky? Oh, so you wanted to go and do the challenge? Lucy responded. Gajil went pale and stopped talking at that. He uttered, never mind. That made Levi chuckle. Loke questioned, what about the others? Fried and Brixlow encountered Laxus who got carried away, said Makarov. Ouch. Gray grimaced as he recalled his most recent encounter with Laxus. Juvia and Lisana met that damn knight who doesn't know the meaning of holding back, Makarov sighed. Back on Route D in the interim, Erza stood to the side, not even perspiring, while Lisana and Juvia lay on rocks, cross-eyed and completely defeated. Back with everyone, Lucy remarked, that left Elman and Evergreen. Kana started, but, the route that was left, before everyone froze, their expressions demonstrating how hopeless that team was. It was Mirajane. That everyone said. Levi went on, sucks to be them. Gajeel remarked, I could still have beaten her. You're not, Naru thought, if she's wearing that succubus outfit of hers. When someone yelled, hold on a minute. Everyone turned to watch Elfman and Evergreen emerge from the bushes, both of them battered and blue, with Evergreen standing by Elfman's much larger bulk. He smiled and said, we managed to beat Mira Nay. Say what? Exclaimed Gray once more. Happy inquired, how did you manage to beat Mira Jane? Elfman's face instantly cracked. He said sadly, I cannot say, as a man. Evergreen said with ease, let's just say that we found an opening and exploited it. Naru remarked knowingly, oh, I am sure that it was some opening. And I bet you two discussed what you told her afterwards, right? Elfman and Evergreen responded quite differently. Evergreen went atomic red, and Elfman went pale. She stumbled. WEDD did what we had to in order to get past her. For a plan made up like that, it was fortunate that we could work together like that. Naru grinned and said, oh, I am sure that is the case. Still, the conversation has a nice touch. Wonder if I should play it at the wedding. Elfman and Evergreen both experienced the shattering of their worlds. Wedding? Inquired Lucy. With the exception of two teammates who were miscolored, everyone looked at Naru in bewilderment. Naru pointed to the two latecomers and remarked, that is their story to tell. Makarov smiled mischievously and said, go on, we're listening. Elfman and Evergreen wished they could simply vanish now. Naru chuckled as Evergreen gave Makarov a literal bitch slap, claiming that she had said what she had said to gain an opportunity to attack Mira. Natsu remarked, you still didn't say what you said. Glaring at him, she removed her glasses. But by that time, he was not looking her in the eyes, instead, he was focused on Elfman. As amusing as this is, you lot can grill them later. Naru replied. I believe we have the second stage to begin. True that. Makarov concurred, choosing to question Naru later because he was still interested in what Evergreen and Elfman had told Mira. Speaking of whom, Erza turned to face Mira, stunned by her words. Elfman and Evergreen are getting married? She inquired. With an embarrassed expression on her face, Mira rubbed the back of her head and said, and afterwards, they beat the crap out of me. Juvia and Lisana sat on the opposite side of the table, the latter wearing a do I look like I care expression while the former was engaged in the conversation. Erza pointed to Mira with her ladle and said, hold on a moment. When's the wedding? And wait, when did those two even start? No, I think it was just a plan to throw me off guard. Mira replied. Guess I have a long way to go. Erza questioned, is it really just a plan? Mira's expression brightened a little as she said, those two? I don't really see it. I mean, if they get married and have a kid. Mira imagined a child with Elfman's face, Evergreen's glasses and hair color, and hair that was simultaneously wavy and spiky. Baby. And like Elfman, spit out random nonsense. Mira burst into tears at the sight of it. The others, for some reason, saw what Mira had pictured, and Erza thought the child looked adorable just as she had imagined. Lisana said, Elf Nichan and Evergreen, they're kind of birds of a feather, actually. She was already considering attempting to bring the two together, but she was unaware that she was about to venture into hazardous territory, which would be risky for her at the very least because someone else was already working there. When Juvia considered having children, especially with a certain ice-make magician, she was literally boiling up in shame. After that, they started to wonder where the others were. Returning to Naru had a sudden feeling that someone was attempting to interfere with one of her pet projects, and she knew who it was. Anyway, the second stage is to find the grave of Mavis Vermilion, one of the founders as well as first guild master of Fairy Tail. Makarov continued. Natsu questioned, what kind of wacky trial is that? Now we have to find the remains of some long-dead person? And was immediately knocked to the ground by Naru's fist. He sank deeper into the earth as Naru yelled at him, we're talking about one of the people without whom Fairy Tail wouldn't exist, you bloody moron. Anyway, I am going to go and spend some time on the north side of the island. Naru replied. Maybe see if Erza wants to try skinny dipping. Makarov wanted to create clones of himself right away so he could go see that. And when Naru glared at him murderously, the thought was snatched from him. I'll also be setting up a barrier to prevent anyone from seeing us, Naru replied. Spoilsport. Makarov pondered, but shrank in the glare. The idea of Erza and Naru skinny dipping in the ocean left Loke and Elfman looking stunned. Evergreen slapped her partner in the face because, for some reason, she was upset that he was considering another woman. Naru thought, those two are ahead of schedule. Not long after, Lucy was screaming like a spoiled brat who had just been exposed to the real world, while Kana and Lucy were busy escaping from a giant lizard. Kana yelled, "Lucy, hurry up," as the lizard snarled at Lucy, narrowly avoiding her ass. In another location, Gajeel and Levi were defending themselves against a massive whale-like creature by hiding behind a rock. "This is a crazy island," Gajeel said. This was insane, even by his high standards. As one of the local herbivores reassured Levi that this half-pint mage was friendly and wouldn't harm it, Levi uttered the terrifying words, "I might die here." In another location, Gray and Loke were escaping a group of birds with long, lethal claws on their feet and beaks full of sharp teeth. Gray yelled, "To become S-class, this ain't nothin'." Loke exclaimed, "Way to put on a brave face, and when did you lose your clothes again?" Again, Elfman and Evergreen were fleeing from a huge carnivorous pig with razor-sharp teeth and hoofs that was obviously determined to eat the two mages for lunch. Elfman yelled, "Those who are men should not run from their enemies," as he fled from an adversary. Evergreen yelled back, "Shut up. Real men would know when not to shout bullshit like that." Last one, I swear, for the time being. A group of monsters were fleeing from a furious Natsu. One of the monsters thought, "We shouldn't have eaten that fish he was frying," but Natsu grabbed his tail and grilled him medium rare before pursuing the others. Mira and Lisana were at the base camp when Naru got there. She said to the siblings, "Hey you two, where's Juvia and Chan?" In response, Lisana said, "Oh, hey Naru nay. Juvia and Erza went to look for Wendy and Mest, who should have been here by now." Naru, who apparently didn't notice the drop of blood leaking from Lisana's nose before the younger snowflake wiped it away, remarked, "I see, guess I'll have to go skinny dipping by myself then. Perhaps you should try it with Natsu." That was it. Lisana had a severe nosebleed and flu. Mira said, "Well, that's new." Naru laughed. After telling a blushing Mira, Naru left for the North Beach, saying, "Wait in a few weeks when I'll be saying the same thing to Elfman and Ever once I get them to start dating." In relation to Erza and Juvia, Erza was dragging Juvia along the floor while she listened to her and Naru discuss the S-class trials they had gone through years earlier. It seems that Naru was the only mage to use Senin Garashi to defeat Laxus during the competition. Erza was fortunate enough to go the peaceful route that year, but Makarov reportedly pitted the remaining competitors against one another during the final trial. Naru and she were the only two competitors left, and they had beaten each other until they were both unconscious at the same moment. Two mages were promoted to S-class in that year, the only one in fairy tale history to do so. Erza continued to talk about how tough the trials were for her, ignoring the fact that Juvia didn't give a damn and preferred to go find Gray and keep pursuing him. Not long after, the situation with the teams had somewhat changed by the time Naru reached the beach. Two lizards were pursuing Kana and Lucy this time. Levi was wondering why she had teamed up with this noisy guy and why she had fallen in love with him in the first place, while Gajeel was literally using mallets to pound away at the strange whale creature. The flock of birds had just been frozen by Gray when another one showed up and the pursuit resumed. After Evergreen was slashed by the beast that was pursuing them, Elfman threw himself and Evergreen down a tunnel to save him. Standing atop a massive heap of charred monster corpses, Natsu searched for a battle that would serve as a kind of warm-up. He immediately went north after smelling something that he knew would challenge him, his desire for a fight severely impairing his judgment and preventing him from considering how severely Naru would beat his ass into the ground. With a small groan, Naru stretched before taking off her clothes and doing what she had promised to do, erecting a privacy barrier and skinny dipping. Regretfully, Natsu saw her in her birthday suit before Naru's still-clothed clone showed up next to him, beat the living daylights out of him, and then dropped him off outside the barrier. After about 14 minutes, Naru felt a sizable crowd of people cross the barrier while she was occupied with allowing the sun to dry her off. She heard someone say, "Hey, boys. Look here, we have a lone fairy trash." "Which one is this?" someone else inquired. As she got to her feet, Naru complained as she noticed a sizable gathering of figures in black cloaks brandishing a variety of weapons. She noticed blood dripping from the underside of some of their masks. She growled when she saw the emblem on those masks. "Grimoire Heart, you fuckers have a lot of nerve coming here," she replied. One of the figures yelled, "Whatever, just put on some fucking clothes," based on the voice, likely a female. Naru looked down and then cupped both of her breasts, saying, but clothing is so restricting." About half of the group fell to the ground, and she heard it. "Have you no dignity?" yelled the woman from before. Lost it when I was exiled from my home village. Naru responded right away. Self-preservation? Naru put her arms on her hips and said, lost that during my training. Decency? Putting on a seductive thinking pose, Naruto remarked, I think I left that behind when I was being chased by pirates 7 years ago. Are you an exhibitionist? With her arms folded beneath her breasts, Naru retorted, why do you think I came here, where nobody else goes? Also, there is a barrier around here so nobody would see me in the first place. Are you a slut? With her hands on her hips, Naru leaned forward and asked, are you a magazine reporter? No, smugly, Naru said, then there is your answer. With nods from her fellows, the woman screamed, just fucking put some clothes on. Naru said seductively, okay, I hope you have the money for the reverse strip show. One of the intruders became enraged by that and hurried towards Naru while brandishing his sword. Naru's foot landed in his stomach, launching him into the woods. And as if nothing had happened, Naru was preoccupied with putting on her bikini top. When the other intruders saw one of their own scent flying like that, they all charged, disregarding the fact that she was naked. In the process of putting on her bikini bottom and making sure the entire thing fit snugly, Naru somehow managed to beat them senseless. The intruders had stopped by the time she was done. Naru said, observing the intruders' unconscious forms, okay, ready when you are. Well, this is pathetic. In the meantime, everyone had similar experiences with Grimoire Heart thugs, with the exception of Elfman, Evergreen, Mest, Wendy, Natsu, and Happy. However, the thugs were consistently being beaten senseless. A strange mage without a guild emblem on his persona was encountered by Natsu, Happy, and possibly the newest couple in Fairy Tail. A series of explosions destroyed several ships that were appearing around the nearby point as Charla and Lily confronted Mest, questioning whether he was actually a member of the guild. While Lisana was contentedly scratching away with her animal soul, cat, tiger, Mirajane was employing sleeping magic on her opponents. Naru would have shuddered if she had seen her. In the meantime, Konoha, two groups of raw genin, fresh out of the academy, were on their first C-rank mission when a certain demon cat named Tora left them. The Catch Tora mission was moved up to C rank because the damn cat apparently became so strong. This gives the genin a better idea of what life or death battles are like, especially since Tora began fighting back rather than fleeing. Sakura watched her team, along with Sasuke's, get scratched just inches from death and said, nay, hun, remember that mission? How can I not? Kakashi-sensei made us take it almost on a daily basis to teach us teamwork. Sasuke replied. Glad that we had Naru back then, I still don't know how she managed to tank all those hits from Tora's feared cat style. Fury swipes no jutsu. Sasuke replied. True, I got caught up in that technique once after becoming a chunin. I thought I was going to die. Sakura concurred, didn't you also get caught once? Suppressing a shudder, Sasuke questioned, why do you think it became a C-rank mission? Next time we see Naru, I am so putting her under a genjutsu and forcing the secret of her being a tank out of her. And get neutered afterwards by her using her Rasengan. Said Sakura. No way, I still want to continue having sex, thank you very much. After glancing at her, Sasuke grinned. How about I rock your world this evening if you heal the genin? That cat still needs to be caught. He believed Sakura had learned the legendary Hiraishin no Jutsu because she vanished so quickly. Returning to Naru, Taju Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, was Naru's cry, and hundreds of clones were made before they were sent out to hunt down and eliminate any intruders. As Naru made her way to the place where she felt the most hate, she said, Grimoire Heart, you've put your hand into a fox's den. I hope you are ready to get bitten. In her mind, she heard Kurama say, I sense 8 strong presences with great amounts of malice. Kit, what is your plan? Naru thought to him, as usual. Get the girl, Erza, kick some more ass, and look badass while doing it. She caught Kurama laughing. How about heading to the strongest presence and letting me have some fun as well? You understand that you remain a secret, don't you? Naru pondered. Her stomach rumbled with annoyance. Naru was reminded of that. Now then, where did we leave our lunch? Naru was able to put on her battle outfit quickly. However, as time passed, she sensed the defeat of 3 evil intent sources in Gildarts' return. When he stops holding back, no other fool could release magical power like that guy. Additionally, Gildarts was interacting with the person she had intended to interact with. Until she heard a nearby person in distress, followed by a scream that was all too familiar. Lucy, Naru said, fading into the forest. A few seconds later, A trail of burning ground was left behind as a crimson blur sped between an animal and the food that was about to be consumed from a bush with succulent leaves. The animal asked itself, what the fuck was that? Before realizing that its food was burning. No. The battle thus far not being the brightest of minds, Kane Hikaru gave his cursed voodoo doll to a blonde cheerleader named Lucy, who proceeded to make him strike a number of strange poses that she had seen Mira Jane strike for the Weekly Sorcerer magazine's pinup photos. After regaining possession of the doll, Kane took one of Lucy's hairs and viciously returned the favor, even forcing her to strip down to her panties and perform a degrading belly dance. The battle was briefly in their favor when Natsu appeared, but then Kane recalled that Lucy's hair was still in his voodoo doll. Happy couldn't resist pulling out a camera and filming Lucy using Natsu as a punching, kicking, and Muay Thai bag. While Lucy was saying, "Ah, my arms are going to break," and Natsu was yelling, "What the hell is happening?" Happy and Kane couldn't contain their laughter. With a basket of fish he had acquired from an unknown source, Kane said, "Hey, Blue Cat, send me a copy of this later, will you?" "Aye," said Happy. In the meantime, Lee-sana and Mira-Jane were engaged in combat with a very powerful tree guy who somehow managed to set off explosions wherever there were plants. Nevertheless, he was being outclassed by the Takeover Sisters' teamwork. Azuma was grinning as he enjoyed the fight with the two girls, one of whom had a white tail, white cat ears, a striped fur bra and underwear, and cat paws on all four limbs, with claws that could injure him. The other resembled a succubus without horns. A tight, skimpy suit with a split down the middle from neck to navel, demonic claws, tail, and wings, and it almost seemed like it was ready to fuck you. And Mira-Jane helped Lee-sana by using her magic to send all the plants Azuma sprouted straight to hell while she engaged in close-quarters combat, which she had learned from Naru before traveling to Edelus. This was very demonic. I am not letting her take care of my garden. On a different battlefield, Rusty Rose was giving Elfman and Evergreen a hard time. His arc of embodiment, which allows him to create anything he wants, was completely overwhelming the quarreling couple. They were stuck in Rusty Rose's Tower of Dingir at the time, and since they thought this would be their last time together, they got into another argument and unintentionally admitted that they liked each other more than they were friends. Naturally, Rusty Rose heard it, laughed, and, being the heinous sadist that he was, gave them free use of one arm, moving the fingers only a few millimeters apart and out of reach before detonating the tower. Elfman lost the will to fight for some time after the explosion, but Evergreen was fortunate to survive. There, Erza and Juvia came across a pinkette named Merity, who claimed that Erza was only number 3 on the hit list. Merity had no chance when Juvia and Erza found out that Gray and Naru were first and second, respectively. However, she did knock Juvia out of the fight after she connected her feelings to Gray, before Erza entered like a raging animal. Not at all. A furious demon. Not at all. Erza furious? That one. The fact that Merity's hair reminded Erza of a certain pink-haired former teammate of Naru's, whom she still harbors a slight animosity toward, may or may not have contributed to her outburst, but she ended up with deep cuts that weren't fatal, but she was out for the count afterward. Meanwhile, a very familiar face held Naru up. "Ultir, I always knew that you were a bitch, but having been secretly part of Grimoire Heart this whole time? I applaud your infiltration skills, they may just rival my own," she said while clapping. "Naru Uzumaki, the only true unknown amongst fairy tale, tell me, how does it feel not being able to come to a friend's aid in their time of need?" Naru cracked her knuckles and remarked, "Not as bad as you are going to be feeling in a few minutes from now. I am going to kick your big ass." Ultir grinned and said, "It's bigger than yours at least." Naru smirked in response, saying, "That means it will be easier to kick." They both stiffened as they awaited a signal, which turned out to be a leaf that fell between them. As soon as it hit the ground, chaos ensued. Ultir conjured up a green orb and hurled it at Naru, who ducked and attempted to enter for her specialty, which is beating the living daylights out of people. Naru was taken aback when the orb suddenly crashed into her back. Ultir hurried forward, pulled out a knife, and stabbed Naru, who vanished in smoke. Ultir gasped, "What?" Behind her, she heard Naru say, "Missed me." Then she heard Naru laughing and felt a powerful kick land on her butt. With a smile, Naru declared, "Point 1 goes to me." Ultir snarled before her eyes abruptly grew to thousands. Regretfully, this Naru also exploded. She yelled, "Where the hell are you?" She heard, "Over here. Over here. And up here." She turned around and saw dozens of Neris emerge from behind trees and out of the forest. A few even stood atop branches. Ultir questioned, HMPF, using your cloning magic now, are you? Before applying her arc of time to the clones, but nothing occurred. What? She exclaimed in shock. How did her magic get past the clones? She heard a voice behind her say, I think I'll let you in on a little secret here. She turned around to see Naru grinning. Checkmate, bitch, magic isn't the only power in this world. The next thing Ultir knew, she was struck by something as heavy as a full freighter train, and she collapsed to the ground, her lungs empty of air. At the very least, it felt like she had bruises all over her internal organs. She gasped, one, hit, and then passed out. Naru examined her knuckles and thought, well, that's what happens to S-class opponents when I'm not holding back. I like this, she exclaimed, quickly dismissing her clones, even though it was refreshing to use them as a distraction. They always managed to fool the poor bastards. Even though the majority of the fighters were still dispersed across the island, she had the impression that most of the fights had ended as she was leaving. She made the decision to visit base camp and observe the conditions there. Ultir regained consciousness 10 minutes later, became enraged when Gray told her that she reminded him of who was both her mother and his teacher, and fought with him until they fell into the ocean, where she regained her mother's memories before being handed her ass by a fairy tale mage once more. In the meantime, Zankro had been steamrolling Makarov and Natsu. Since Hades had already weakened Makarov, the old man simply crushed Zankro and threw him into the air. And the Dragon Slayer literally knocked out the God Slayer with a single move after Natsu somehow managed to use up Zankro's magic by emptying his own container and using that as a substitute. Erza was going to beat him up for that later. Natsu's fatigue was, as he always says, fired up, after that, indicating that Natsu was temporarily absent. After defeating Mira and Lisanna, Azuma faced Erza one-on-one. At first, she had a slight advantage over Erza, but then Erza used a tactic she had witnessed Naru employ on others, including herself. Put aside all defense and just attack, or Plan BTSOOT, as Naru and Natsu refer to it. Naru, for some reason, always seems to get it right, while Natsu, not so much. In any case, Azuma was put on the defensive by Erza's relentless attack, and the redhead destroyed all of the spells he used in his attack. Erza really lived up to the fiery redhead stereotype after Azuma boasted about how easily he had defeated the Takeover Sisters, with her aura acting as the fire. In countless other universes. With a sudden shiver, Minato Namikaze, the fourth Hokage of the Hidden Leaf and Konoha's Yellow Flash, was grateful that his wife, Kushina, who was redheaded, wasn't the only redhead in the world who could frighten away even the death god with a simple outburst. But he felt sorry for whoever had to put up with that redhead. In countless universes, numerous Jellals, Narutos, Natsus, Greys, and countless other characters from an unknown number of stories all let out violent sneezes. And Naru. When Naru sneezed, Kurama felt compelled to go back in time and congratulate a blonde man who had successfully sealed him in his daughter. The man, it turns out, had larger balls than he believed. Oh, that man was married to Kushina. That concludes the explanation. Loki gave Zoldeo his own power after he attempted to possess the lion spirit, and Capricorn beat the living daylights out of him. As a result, Zoldeo, who had possessed the celestial spirit Capricorn, lost to Team Cheerleader, also known as Lucy, and her spirits. The battle between Gildarts and Blue Note Stinger, the Grimoire Heart ace. Approximately 30 minutes later, when Natsu, Wendy, Happy, Lucy, Erza, Gray, and Naru all gathered in one place, Naru was immediately inundated with inquiries about why she was there unscathed. They finally agreed with Happy's justification, because it's Naru. Without adding a question, they followed Natsu and his nose until they reached the beach, where they discovered a huge floating ship that immediately made Natsu sick. Near the ship's edge stood an elderly man with long gray hair and beard, dressed in a cloak and wearing an eye patch. There was an army of mages on the beach itself, all well organized and carrying a variety of weapons that, even by this nation's standards, didn't belong there. The elderly man exclaimed, I see you have finally come, Fairy Tale. You may have beaten Blue Note and the 7 other S-class mages, but how will you fare against the combined might of our own affiliated alliance of dark mages? He started to giggle. Natsu stated, easy. We'll blow them away. The elderly man remarked, I highly doubt that. Even if Uzumaki there makes her fabled 1,000 clones, which I believe to be her maximum, my army can stand up against twice that number. The dark mages on the ground picked up his laugh. Due to the unfavorable numbers, the majority of the Fairy Tale team felt uneasy there. They could have defeated this group if they had been rested and unhurt, but the whole place fell silent as Naru laughed. Naru's laughter halted as abruptly as it began. Sorry, inhale. Did you, chuckle, just say, laugh, my max number, inhale, is 1,000? She said. Bitch please, I was able to make 1,000 clones when I was 13. Suddenly, a thick cloud of smoke engulfed the area behind her, but it quickly cleared. Naru declared, I am not one person. We are legion, uttered collectively by a legion of Neris. The sight of about 5,000 Neris standing behind the team in rank and file wherever possible made everyone's eyes bulge. Even the trees had tidy rows of Neris standing on them. Naru told her girlfriend, Erza, you and the others go beat up Mr. I am an old fart there. I'll deal with these guys. Erza warned, be careful, Naru, after a few minutes. Naru was breathing heavily as she stood in front of a massive stack of unconscious bodies. Maybe she shouldn't have created so many clones or split her chakra 5,000 times. She sighed as thunder struck the ship, giving thanks to the gods for the assistance she had sent a clone to provide. She also pondered how she would get there because she lacked the ability to fly and the ice ramp Grey Maid got caught in the crossfire of her raging through the dark mage lines. Furthermore, Kurama wasn't very useful at the moment because he was napping. She chose to awaken the old fox instead. Clone number 16,584. Wake me. Even after disconnecting from Kurama's mindscape, he could still hear her scream of agony. She heard Kurama complain, Oi, kid, I am so going to get you for this. Oh, what did I do now? Naru pondered naively. You bloody well should know, your clone just shoved a futon. Rosin shuriken up my ass. After that, Naru went pale, but then Kurama gave her some feedback, and her ass began to hurt a lot. Kurama was celebrating while Naru screamed in agony. Kurama exclaimed with delight, that's right, bitch. Feel my pain, experience the wrath of the mighty Kyubi no Kitsune. Kurama felt 9 figures suddenly appear at the bases of his tails. He saw 9 of Naru's mental clones in the back, all of them brandishing swords and appearing to be sparking electricity from the metal. Oh, fuck me. Kurama's turn to scream out in agony came again, but this time he also linked Naru in, but Naru felt nothing. I'm sorry, Kurama, but I won't feel the pain because I don't have tails, Naru said with a sly smile while massaging her aching ass. Naru had to flee immediately before being crushed by tons of metal, masonry, and broken timber, along with a few 100 kilograms of mages and a few dozen pounds of cats, after a sudden burst of fire and lightning erupted from the side of the ship hovering above her. The mages that Naru vanquished weren't so fortunate, though. The crunching of bones made Naru wince, relieved that the mages' deaths were swift and, at the very least, relatively painless. She said a brief prayer for their souls as well. She watched her friends emerge from the wreckage after the smoke and dust had subsided. A tall goat wearing sunglasses and a butler suit was carrying Lucy like a princess in one arm while holding Natsu like a duffel bag in the other, while lecturing Lucy about the need to keep her weight down or something. She laughed as the scene helped her forget the pain in her ass. Erza and, of all people, Laxus joined in on her contagious laughter. Shortly after, Gray and Wendy both burst out laughing. When Lucy learned that her new butler, Spirit, would be ensuring that she had a healthy diet and lifestyle going forward, she was too shocked, and Natsu was having a terrible time. Happy had no idea what they were laughing about, but Charla, Lily, and Happy all joined in. Time-skipping things quickly calmed down after Erza decided to try her hand at what Wendy had been doing, which is to say that she was a doctor and nurse, delaying the mage's departure. Naturally, her cruel techniques caused more fractures in Gray and Gajeel than the Grimoire Heart mages did, and Erza was merely applying bandages. Wendy would undoubtedly gain a great deal of experience treating those two by herself. And that was prior to Erza focusing on the other wounded individuals. All of the remaining dark mages vanished from the island in one way or another, but the majority were taken prisoner by the Magic Council, of which Mest was a member, shocking everyone except Makarov and Naru. Mest attempted to remove them from the island as well, but none of the fairy tale mages accepted his claims that Zarif had visited or that he had heard him utter the word Archnologia. Since Mest had technically snuck into a guild sacred event, Naru knew that he wasn't lying because of Kurama, but she also knew that she couldn't persuade her fellow guild members of this at this time. It was all she could do to persuade her guildmates not to travel to Era and destroy the council itself, especially since he had positioned a fleet of Magic Council warships off the island's coast. Lucy, Kana, Naru, and Erza had discovered a spring with herbs in it and were contentedly soaking in it. Erza was floating around in the water, and Naru swam beneath her and pulled her down, while Kana and Naru teased Lucy about her floating breasts. Erza struck back, and the 4 girls got into a water fight. Lucy actually fought, Unlike the last time she got into a friendly fight cough pillow fight cough, in which she was instantly knocked out. Later on, Natus, Gildarts, and Happy were spotted fishing. Gildarts had a basket of fish next to him, while Natsu had a pile of fish and Happy had a pile of fish bones, to which Happy had just added his most recent leftovers. They all turned when they heard someone approaching and saw Kana and Lucy approaching. Back in the spring, Naru and Erza were spending some time together, cuddling and simply enjoying each other's company. When Laxus heard Evergreen and Elfman tell everyone about their altercation with Rusty Rose, he was blinking. However, they mumbled the part about them confessing to one another, oblivious to the fact that, as a dragon slayer himself, Laxus could somehow understand people whose voices are either muffled by something like bandages or mumbled beyond recognition. And he was blinking because he believed that Elfman was prepared to tolerate Evergreen's attitude and that she was a tsundere and a hardcore prude who would never find someone she truly liked. Additionally, Elfman never used the word men in the story, and Evergreen never boasted about anything. It must be freezing in hell, Laxus observed. In hell right now. Fearful cries and shouts reverberated throughout the barren and flaming hellish fields as a random devil ran for its life and yelled, "WHO, let the ice demons loose." These fields were traversed by enormous, icy creatures that froze everything in their path. Returning to the land when Kurama literally yelled at Naru that something large and hazardous was on its way to the island, Naru recoiled. Erza flinched and turned to Naru, worried. She inquired, "What is it?" Naru didn't finish the sentence because she didn't have to. "Kurama, he says something." When the black dragon finally came into view of the island, its roar startled everyone away from their activities. Naru exclaimed, "Kami, it's a fucking dragon."
I will continue this story in next part. Till then, we weeb offline.